Councillors, we're live. Just to let you know. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Latrobe City Council's monthly council meeting. Tonight's meeting is being held with councillors and guests joining us both in person and virtually. I'm very pleased to welcome Deputy Mayor Dan Clancy online. We have Councillor Ferguson, who is joining us. Councillor Gibson is here with us, as is Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss, and also our CEO, Steve PSNT. Just for those who are not regular attendees within the council chamber, just to let you know that we have now gone live, so anything that is heard in the chamber is reflected in that collection of information and the broadcast. We now move on to the recognition of traditional owners of the land. I would like to acknowledge that we are meeting here today on the traditional lands of the Brakalung people of the Gunai-Kurnai Nation, and I pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and if there are other elders who are present with us this evening, I would also like to acknowledge you. On to the prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For the kingdom, the power, and the glory are yours now and forever. Amen. Some housekeeping matters. If you are with us in the room tonight, you'll be aware of the opportunities to depart the meeting at some stage. Some of you may choose to do that after certain matters are heard. If you could just do that as quietly as you can, because everything does get picked up on the audio-visual link. But please be mindful that your voice and image, if you happen to be speaking to us, may be captured in the recording and used on the live broadcast as well. And for those participating in tonight's meeting, that council works under set governance rules, and there is levels of conduct that we expect, both in the nature of the meeting, its processes, but also those who are joining us to participate as well. Thank you very much for that. We don't have any apologies or requests for leave of absence in this meeting, so we'll continue to move through. Item 4 on the agenda is the adoption of the minutes. This is page 4 on tonight's agenda. Councillor Clancy, I note you. Moving.
Madam Mayor, with just a very, very small amendment.
Okay, what would you like to speak to that, Councillor Clancy, and then we'll see if we can get a seconder for you?
No, I'm happy to have a second in this week. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Councillor Gibson, seconder?
Happy to second.
This is moving to meetings, the 5th and the 19th of December, and on the 5th there's just Councillor Lund's name is spelt incorrectly. And I just thought it was right for the 19th, but not the 5th, and I thought I'd just make that so we didn't think that a different Councillor Lund was present.
No worries. Thank you so much, Councillor Clancy. On the basis that it's purely administrative and acknowledgement of a change, I don't think we need to go through the formalities of those kinds of things. If there isn't any opposition to that, we'll consider that one carried unanimously with that change. Thank you so much, councillors. Councillors, do we have any declarations of interest relating to conflicts, interest or others on matters to be heard before us tonight? Our hands are up. Councillor Middlemiss and then Councillor Lund.
Madam Mayor, I have a perception and perhaps a real conflict of interest in relation to item 8.1 as a nearby property holder, and therefore I will leave the room for that item.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillor Lund.
13.2, I've got a direct conflict with my employee involved in this. Thank you. I'll be leaving.
Thank you, Councillor Lund. Councillor Gibson.
I do not have a conflict with the buffer. Sorry, I didn't write the one down, but I do not have a conflict. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much, Councillor Gibson. Yep,
7.1.
Lovely. Thank you very much. And I think in relation to some of those things, for those seeking points of clarification, there is a significant item in there in relation to the buffer. It covers a broad range of areas across the municipality and affects people equally in common. So the nature of a conflict is diminished in relation to that. We'll continue to move through unless we have any other conflicts, no other declarations. We'll keep moving through. Item 6 on the agenda is public participation. Move on to the matters where we hear from the local community. Members of the public have the opportunity to lodge a question to be answered at the council meeting, and the questions are received in writing by 12 noon on the Friday prior to the council meeting and are responded to by the CEO. For tonight's council meeting, we have one question from the public in relation to use of cash for council payments, and I'll now ask the CEO to address the question as presented. Thank you, Ms. Pearson.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So the question is from Laurie Haylock, and the topic is in relation to use of cash for council payments. And the question is, does the council support the continuing use of cash for all payment transactions? So in response to that, council currently supports the acceptance of cash at the majority of our sites, and we would continue to support this payment method while there remains a viable demand from our customers and ratepayers. We do also, though, operate 2 cashless sites where we don't accept cash, and that's due to low demand and also risks of accepting cash at those sites. We are continually monitoring the cost of cash handling on our organisation. We will continue to support the receipt of cash through outlets such as Australia Post, and we have experienced a reduction in recent years of cash payments at council offices as our residents turn to alternate payment methods. While at the moment we will continue to support cash payments for all types of transactions, this may not necessarily be an option at all of our facilities into the future. That's a response to the question.
Thank you, Mr. Pizzani. I'll just go to Councillor Gibson first. He had a question, then I'll come to you, Councillor Middlemiss.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My question is, through you to the CEO, yes, we've got 2 cashless sites. If the person involved trying to pay an account cannot do it any other way, can we actually help them out with that?
So through you, Madam Mayor. So from memory, one of those sites, there's an alternate site very close by, and if the person who was experiencing those difficulties were to contact us, we'd be able to talk them through what the options are that are available in terms of payment. Most of those sites, the 2 sites where we don't have, there are alternative methods nearby, so we'd be able to talk them through that process in terms of where they would be able to access alternative payments, which includes, as touched on, Australia Post, but also in those towns we have other options available for them.
Councillor Middlemiss.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. In talking to members of the gallery, I noticed that there is a group there who thought that they could come and ask a question or address
Correct.
council
We've already
tonight.
addressed that. The
You
CEO's
have,
had a
have you?
conversation. The question wasn't received in writing in advance of the meeting,
What I was
unfortunately.
going to suggest is that you outline the procedure, but you've already done
sorry.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. So further to that, and happy for the CEO to address that further, there is that requirement that the public question time questions either relate to a matter on the agenda, which we have some public speakers coming up, or a question not unlike the nature of the question just put to the CEO need to be tabled to council by 12 o'clock on the Friday before the meeting and then addressed accordingly. So there was suggestion of one, but it hadn't been received and registered in relation to that. Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Mr. CEO, was there anything else you wanted to address?
Just to, I suppose, add to that point, questions that are received responded to by myself in terms of the governance rules, and they, as the Mayor touched on, received by 12 p.m. on the Friday preceding the council meeting, given it's on a Monday, a clear day. If somebody wishes to speak on an agenda item, which is different than asking a question, they actually get the opportunity to speak before the council. So that's only for items, as the Mayor touched on, that are actually listed in the council agenda in terms of speaking to council and being able to ask any questions of that speaker.
Councillors, any further questions in relation to that? Councillor Gibson. So I can take it
We've
offline
never
if you
done
want.
it before, but if somebody puts a question in, is there any avenue that they could actually speak to the question? Because it would then form part of the agenda.
Sorry. As in, if a member of the community walked up now, handed in a question?
No. If they put it in 12 o'clock on Friday,
Yes.
could they or couldn't they?
Mr. CEO, procedure in relation to public questions?
So no, public questions under the current governance rules are that they're responded to by myself, and it actually says in the governance rules at the moment that excuse me, the person should be in the gallery. If they're not, then we can actually provide the response to them.
provide the response via the Office of the CEO to allow for a written response and also update for the councillors at the same time. Does that assist? Thank you very much, councillors. Any further questions on public speaking times? Okay. Sorry? I'm sorry? Correct. Mr Prigg, if you've got an issue with the way we conduct our council meetings, you can leave. Mr Prigg, you can leave the meeting. Thank you very much. Could the officers escort Mr Prigg out of the meeting, please?
That's good. Thank you.
Councillors, we'll continue on. As we said before, disruption to the meeting, which is unnecessary in any circumstances. We will conduct the meeting. I think the councillors have reasonably accepted the explanation in relation to that matter, and there is no room for us to have to engage with the gallery in relation to the conduct of the business of this particular meeting. Just allow for our community members to leave. CEO. Councillors, any questions before we move on? Just want to allow you that opportunity. No? Comfortable to proceed? Great, okay. So now we're moving on to public speakers. So members of the public who have registered prior to 12 noon will be given the opportunity to speak to the items listed on the agenda for up to 3 minutes. Speakers are requested to keep their address brief and to the main issue of concern. Councillors may ask questions of the speakers, and just to be clear, councillors, it's an opportunity for you to ask questions either on what's presented or the matter presented in the agenda that is relevant to this. If you could please contain that to actual questions, that would be most helpful. And to clarify that this is not an opportunity to enter into debate or make commentary on any matter raised by the speakers. A reminder for all speakers that this is a live stream meeting. Everything is on record in relation to it, and on that basis we will proceed. We have 4 members of the public who would like to address tonight's council meeting. These are in relation to matters on the agenda. The first is 8.1, noting the declaration of interest in relation to 8.1. Then we'll move through to 8.2, 13.1 are the remaining 2 speakers. So the first speaker is in relation to item 8.1. Councillor Middlemiss, is this one that you wanted to leave us for? We'll give Councillor Middlemiss the opportunity to leave the room, and then can someone remind me at the end of this that we get him back, because I'm notorious for not remembering. Somebody send up a flag so he doesn't spend the whole meeting sitting in the councillors' lounge. That could be awkward for everybody. Thank you. Okay, the first speaker in relation to 8.1, the use and development of land with a childcare centre and display of business identification signage at 50 and 52 Southwell Avenue, Newborough, is Adele Pugsley. Adele, if you'd like to come up to the lectern, you have 3 minutes to which to address councillors, and then if you could just stay there. I'm sorry, we've made that a bit high, haven't we? One of the officers can assist you with that. Oh, there you go. You've managed to sort it out. Great.
I've had a bit of practice.
And then stay there with us once you've concluded, because the councillors may have some questions for you. Thanks for being here.
Hello, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak. I want to speak about objection to 8.1. My objection is based on the fact that they're only allowing 20 car parks in the childcare facility. If you go on the statistics of a 36-month-old and higher child of how many carers you are allowed, it is 1 carer per 11 children. Obviously, the smaller children, you need more carers. So if you go on a 95 allowable amount of children in that childcare, that would be more than 8 carers that you need on site for those 95 children. That's not allowing for any of the support staff, for instance, the cook, any cleaners, the centre management, anyone like that. So obviously I feel that there is not enough car parking space allowed. I also feel that the current infrastructure there would not cope with the extra capacity of parents' cars in that area without significant upgrades and costs to council. I feel also that the 2-storey building that they have proposed, while it does comply with current standards of overshadow and things like that, doesn't suit the area and would be intrusive to the neighbourhood. Thank you.
Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Gibson, first question.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Adele, for coming in. Okay, so by your reckoning, basically half the car parks would be taken up by staff.
At least, yes.
Okay, and you were saying that you know the area. What is it like at school drop-off time?
The morning school drop-off time, it's just so congested. You suddenly go from a 60 zone to a 40 zone, and then the parents that are trying to desperately look for a car park in that area. A lot of parents do utilise the rec centre car park, but they still have to, you know, if they're coming from the Newborough proper area, they still have to drive past the school, past that area where the proposed childcare centre is, around the roundabout and then back again. And then they still have to safely get their children with the crossing guard, obviously, across the road as well, which is going to add to the extra congestion as well.
No worries. One
Yep,
more.
absolutely.
If the car parking was sorted, so you actually potentially didn't have staff parking on site, so it would leave 20 plus car parking spots, do you think that would be a better fit?
No, I don't think it's the appropriate area for it really, with the small narrow street that's going into it. I'm still really not sure that 20 car parks would be enough. Because if you think about it, if you're dropping off a child at creche and then at school, you're going to drop off your young child at the creche first, then you're going to walk across the road to drop off your older child, who's not significantly much older, that can't walk him or herself across the road. Then you're going to possibly do story time, and so you will be there much longer than what you would traditionally be at a different creche.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, any further questions in relation to this particular item for Adele? No. Thank you so much for your
Thank
time.
you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Middlemiss, thank you. I was going to forget. I'll just bring Councillor Middlemiss back to the chamber. The next speaker is in relation to item 8.2, use and development of land with a dwelling at Jumbuck Road in our south. Dean Suckling and Prove Proprietary Limited. We got, just working through the technology. Here we go. Just give the chance for that. Oh, was there and then evaporated. Just going to be looking on the screens this time, councillors. Sorry, it was there and then went away again, so we're online, and then we'll be back in the room, and then we'll be online again. Just give the opportunity for that. There we go.
Good evening.
Hi, Dean. Thank you for joining us. Can you hear us okay?
I can, thank you.
Lovely. We'll just go through the process for you, just in case we haven't caught you up or you haven't been able to listen to it in advance. So you have 3 minutes with which to address the council, and then stay with us because councillors may have some questions for you. We'll just refresh. This is on item 8.2, the use and development of land with a dwelling at Jumbuck Road, Yanar South. Would you like to just take your 3 minutes to address council?
Right, we're on, are we? Okay, thank
Yeah.
you. Sorry. Okay, well, good evening, councillors, and thanks for reviewing our application. My name is Dean Suckling, and I'm an agricultural consultant, and I'm representing my clients, Kevin and Sarah Perry, this evening. We're at a bit of a disadvantage this evening. We never received notice of why we were being refused, so I reviewed the council agenda today. It looks like there were 4 reasons for refusal. Number 1, the protection of agricultural land and the proliferation of dwellings. Number 2, it stops any future land consolidation. Number 3, a lack of justification for a dwelling and the adjoining site is owned by my client. And number 4, the proposal is a repeat application. Suffice to say, this land can't be consolidated without cows crossing roads, creeks and other people's properties. The proliferation of dwellings has already happened. There are 11 lifestyle lots abutting this property and all with a house. The adjoining land is not owned by my client. It is owned by his father, who shares the same name. And it is not a repeat application by us. And hopefully each application should be assessed on its own merit anyway. I'm also a dab offended at the suggestion that I've submitted a proposal that in any way damages agricultural land or compromises agriculture. Mr. Perry is fourth generation farmer in this area, and he doesn't even have a house. Mr. Perry and his partner Sarah and their son live in a shed on his father's property, on his father's adjoining property, that allows them to monitor their farm. And the game has changed since these policies were implemented. The value of livestock, the expectation of consumers of good animal welfare, farmland affordability, and overseas ownership means that smaller land has become the only entry option for many farmers like Kevin. Livestock theft is absolutely rampant as well. 200,000 animals were stolen last year because of the increased value. The Perrys are efficient people. Every cent counts, and they value their cows and calves highly. The loss of an animal is a major financial hurt. They can't afford to sacrifice animals like a large farm, where it is considered just an operating cost. The house design is a simple one, and they will mill the timber themselves to reduce costs. This isn't a lifestyle exercise, it's about farming. The house isn't large and won't take up much of their grazing area. The improved infrastructure and farming management will well and truly compensate that small area. I've been involved in a few of these applications over the years, and I've worked with hundreds of farms, and I can safely say the Perry family should be living in their own home in the farm zone, land size regardless. Thank you very much.
Dean, thank you very much. Councillors, do we have any questions? Councillor Ferguson.
Sorry,
You're right.
Thank you, Dean. Did you say at the beginning you hadn't been told what the reasons of refusal were?
No, I read it on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Tough.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Just hand over to the CEO in terms of, do we have any feedback in relation to that?
I was just trying to clarify, Madam Mayor, with my team at the back of the room, whether the applicant was notified. So I'm
all right,
not sure
we'll
whether
just
we've got to bottom up
allow a
and
bit
come
more
back
time
to
for
you.
that. But councillors, any further questions, and we'll come back to that.
I don't know whether it's now
Or in? Did you want to? Your call. Yep, go for it. Councillor Gibson.
Thank you. In light of some of the commentary that we've just heard from Mr. Suckling, and that potentially the report is wrong, it'll come up. If we want to actually address the issues that he's saying is wrong, we would need to defer. But don't we have to make a decision? Otherwise, the actual original
Timing
will come back.
So I think we'll get some advice from the CEO on the best way to manage it. Are we any clear at this point, or is it discussion to be had maybe on an adjournment in advance of the item actually being heard by the council?
We're still checking, Madam Mayor, in relation to the question that's been raised.
Council, with your indulgence, perhaps if we continue to move through and then in advance of the item, perhaps take an adjournment for a few minutes to provide an update to the councillors so that everyone can get clear on where we are in relation to it before the matter's considered. Councillor Harriman.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just wondering if I can ask a question of Mr. Suckling. Just wondering what type of farming are they looking at doing on the property?
It's Angus breeding and calving.
Yep, no worries. That's fine. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Ferguson, just checking in relation to your question, you're happy for us to wait and then look to an adjournment later on to get clarification on the question that you put?
Yes, yeah, I'd like some clarification around that, please.
Great.
Yeah.
No problem at all. Thank you very much. Councillors, any Councillor Law?
Yes, thank you, Dean. I thought I heard you say at the start that there were some people living on a shed on the property. Was that correct?
No, not on the property. It's on the adjoining property, which is owned by my client's family.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillors, any further questions in relation to this? Dean, thank you. Sorry, I'm waiting. Yes? Councillor Clancy?
It might be dealt with when the CEO has some answers, but I just wondered, even with the CEO, when you do provide some answers to Councillor Ferguson's question, whether you might just certainly inform us in the gallery what the normal process would be when an item is set for refusal in a public agenda rather than just by delegation. Just might be good to get what the normal process is. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Clancy. Councillors, any further questions at this point? You may need to prompt me to remind me to get to that point, Councillor Clancy, when we get to that item. If there aren't any further questions, Dean, thank you so much for your time. We will get some further information before we get to actually hearing that matter, and we then may take a brief adjournment and come back with an update. I believe our officers have your contact details, so if they need to connect you in advance of that, then we'll let you know what's going on as well.
They do indeed. Thank you
Great.
very much.
Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Councillors, we're now moving on to to speakers in relation to 13.1. We have two speakers, one with us in person and the other online. This is 13.1, Strzelecki Koala and Wildlife Rehabilitation Centre. The first speaker is Gordon Duncan, President, Friends of the Morwell National Park. Do we have Mr. Duncan with us? Thank you so much. If you'd like to come up to the lectern, you have 3 minutes to address council, and then councillors will ask you any questions, so please stay with us beyond that point. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors. As President of Friends of Morwell National Park, I would like to express our support for the report that Councillor Ferguson has proposed that Council investigate. Although Morwell National Park is small, it is extremely diverse in the number of flora, fauna, different animals that are there. As Friends Group, we are often asked by education institutions, local TAFE schools and others, whether we would help them not only doing day things, but sometimes over multiple months. And as volunteers, we're unable to provide that kind of service. So part of that being an education centre and a learning auditorium would be something that would be of benefit to the local community and also to the wider region. We know in the past there's lots of people who've done things for habitat, for koalas, for those. Our recent surveys that we undertake and have been taking for many, many years have shown quite healthy numbers of, most recent one of greater gliders down at Billy's Creek, and on Foster's Creek of koalas up in the Kerry Road part of the park. In particular with the habitat, of course the park itself was first started in the mid-60s, and there's many different types of plants, orchids and the likes that were quite important. We'll do our mothing survey soon, and in the past we've had world experts have actually taken part in the mothing survey, and the Victorian Entomological Society actually comes as invited to attend when we do the survey in March. So once again, as I said, I would offer our support to Council undertaking this review, but also should clarify at this point that we are just the volunteer organisation that take part in activities and in a small way look after the park. We cannot in any way talk on behalf of the park itself as an entity or Parks Victoria. We cannot do that officially. This is just our Friends Group saying, please look into doing this because we think it's a very good thing to do. Thank you.
Stay with us for a moment because councillors have some questions for you. Councillor Ferguson, do you have a question? Yep, you go ahead, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you. Gordon, in previous discussion, we've discussed how there is a large gully there and some of the terrain is actually hard for the volunteers to access to do specific scientific study and counting. Do you feel that something such as this could also support to broaden what is actually recorded in those areas?
I think that's possible. I know in the past, with permission, that area has been explored by members, going back one in particular when he was capable of doing such things. But even when we do, say, an orchid survey, there are a couple of difficult areas where we need to go into to check on those orchids, and they've been done since, I think, sometime in the 90s. Each year they've been counted, which are the butterfly orchids.
Yes.
Councillor Ferguson,
Well,
any further questions?
No, thank you for your work. My personal favourite are the moths that you count. There's so many varieties, but anyhow, thank you for speaking to that tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Gibson, and then Councillor Clancy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Pardon my ignorance, but is a mothing survey exactly what I think? You're counting the moths?
What happens is that a large sheet is put up, a particular light is used to attract the moths, so it has to be done overnight, and they go until the small hours of the morning and actually record every different moth that comes. And in some cases, there's moths that have been recorded that haven't been seen for decades. So it can be a fluke, but each year it's done and they're registered, and all of that is recorded on iNaturalist, which then can be used for scientific purposes.
One more.
Sure.
A subsequent question. Okay, I know that bees are really important for the ecosystem and everything else. Is that the same type of thing with moths?
Yes, everything is part of, I guess, part of the ecology. I suppose I'm speaking for someone else, but having, say, on one night doing mothing on their own property, they've actually had a powerful owl come in and pinch the moths. But they've actually watched them come in and do it. So they feed on everything that's there, and powerful owls are recorded as being in the park in recent times.
Thank you very much. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Clancy.
Thanks very much. Thanks very much for coming to speak to us tonight. My question was around, you just at the end of your presentation talked about not being able to speak on behalf of, and what sparked my interest was the Friends of the Mall National Park. Here at Council we have a number of friends groups as well that look after bushland reserves, obviously not a national park but bushland reserves, and these work alongside a council and council officers and things like that. Is your connection, you mentioned Parks Victoria, is Parks Victoria associated or linked to the Friends group?
Each time we have an activity, we put that activity forward to Parks. We have to give it permission beforehand. That's done on a monthly basis. We have to comply with all of Parks Victoria's regulations, which include that every member of the Friends group has a Working with Children check, and that's registered with Parks. Any skills that we might use, they need to know. We're allowed to do some track clearing. So anyone who operates a chainsaw must have a relevant licence.
Yeah.
And again, that's registered with Parks. Yeah.
Thanks very much. Councillor Clancy, keep
Subsequent.
going.
Yeah, so it sounds a bit like our reserves as well, we're very similar. So who actually owns the park or manages it, or is the custodian of the park? Is it Parks or?
Parks Victoria.
It is Parks,
So there
yeah.
is a ranger assigned to the park.
Right, okay. It's not another state department and Parks are involved as well?
No.
Yep. Okay, thanks very much.
Councillors, any further question? Councillor Law.
Yep, thank you for the presentation. Just a couple of key questions because of the way this is focused, this motion. Is an educational centre and learning auditorium, whereabouts would that be situated in the park?
I understand that this is that Councillor Ferguson has asked for a report to look at the feasibility of doing this, so I don't know if there's any sites currently being earmarked.
Okay, yeah. And the same thing for the injured koalas and native animals. There's nothing's been specifically.
No, there would need to be. I'm assuming there would need to be a site found.
Yeah.
But I'm assuming that Councillor Ferguson could possibly speak to that.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Councillors, any further questions? Gordon, thank you so much for your time.
Okay, that Madam Mayor. Thank you, councillors.
Councillors, we'll keep moving through this. Next speaker is also in relation to item 13.1, the Strzelecki Koala and Wildlife Rehabilitation Centre. It's an online participant, community member joining us, and it's Matt Campbell. Hi Matt, thank you so much for joining us. Can you hear us okay?
I can. Can you hear me?
We can, and we can see you on the screen as well. Matt, just a bit of a recap. You have 3 minutes with which to address council, and then councillors may have questions for you, so don't drop off until we've had the chance to potentially put those questions to you if you're happy to take them.
Okay, thank you. And thank you, Madam Mayor and councillors, for allowing me the opportunity to speak. Just would like to... Sorry, Madam Mayor, I might have jumped the gun there a bit.
No, go. You're on, and I'll allow the time to we'll start the clock again. You go ahead.
Okay. Thank you. I'd just like to correct a couple of things that Gordon mentioned. I'm actually a member of the Friends of Mole National Park too, and I've been a former president. The gliders that Gordon mentioned are actually the sugar gliders, not greater gliders, so we should clarify that. Greater gliders are quite endangered, so we should clarify that. The powerful owls do indeed occur in the park, but the owls he was referring to that were taking the moths were actually boobuks, a smaller and more common species. One of the other things with moths is they're actually they're very important pollinators for certain plants. And in some cases, such as the Echophoridae family, they are great for fire mitigation in so much as they break down the leaf litter and things like that. My main thing with the proposal put forward by Councillor Ferguson is the education centre. Personally, I live adjacent to the park, and personally, I am asked to take people out to find them specific flora, fauna, fungi. In one case, I had a guy drive over 3 hours to see a single orchid. He heard that I knew where they were, so he came down. But we also take out school groups, bushwalking clubs, photography groups, and a lot of these people are coming down to not just see things, but to learn what we have in the park, how it functions, what its importance is, things like that. And I think part of the education centre, the way it could help too, is that Latrobe City don't have a record of the tourism potential, which could be coupled with the educational side of things. These groups that I lead, the walking groups, the photography groups, a lot of these people come down for a weekend and they will stay in a motel. They'll go to a pub for tea. They'll go to the bakery for lunch. They fill their cars up at a local service station. So I think if we could have a centre such as Councillor Ferguson is proposing, I think it's also an enormous tourism opportunity for Latrobe City, and a way to record who is coming into the area or the people at Mole National Park is attracting to the area. As far as the wildlife recovery goes, there are people who do that on a voluntary basis at their own costs. This could alleviate some of those costs and pressures on them. Although we would need to look at how it's going to be run, how it's going to be funded, where it's going to be situated. But I'm just here to support her proposal in principle. I think it's a great idea, and hopefully we can move forward and maybe commission a report on it.
Matt, thank you very much. Councillors, questions? Councillor Ferguson, you're first up.
Okay, thank you for that, Matt. I just want to verify that to give people an idea, it's about 1,400 acres, the entirety of it, or? Yep.
It's around about, it's in hectares, it's around 500 hectares. So yeah, it would be up towards that figure in acres.
Right, thank you. And over the years in the history, people have fought quite hard to make it a national park, haven't they?
It was a very long fight early on to have the park declared. It is quite a long history. It went on for about 20 or 30 years before the declaration was made in 1967. And
sorry, one more question. In your time, in your time of studying all of the insects and doing the entomology studies, have you discovered some species that people did not know were in our region at all, and things such as that?
We have indeed discovered new species. A man that Gordon alluded to, Ken Harris, has actually had one named after him. We have a number of other species. We've had a number of other species we've found that haven't been seen for a very long time or are yet to be formally described. So there are things waiting there that may yet be accredited to Moore National Park.
Yep. And just another question. I believe that there's a similar situation with the flora as well, that some of the flora that occurs there is no longer, the remnants of it is no longer found in other areas within the region.
Oh, exactly. The park was created specifically, well, one of the main reasons it was created was the number of orchid species, and the butterfly orchid we sort of like to think of as our token species, or what do you want to call it. That has vanished from large areas of its former range, including somewhere like Kinglake, where in 2009 the entire population was wiped out by a single fire, and there has been countless surveys done since, and there's no sign of the butterfly orchid returning.
Right. And I think this will be my final question. Sorry, thanks for everyone's patience. With the regular koala counts each year, do you feel that with professionals employed in a centre such as this, it would be easier to do a more focused and exact study and count on the Strzelecki koala?
There are a number of us, including myself, who are trained in a technique called SAT, which is actually where you don't count koalas, you count koala scats. Our count is we walk along 3 sections of track and count the koalas we physically see. Our results over the years they fluctuated, but they're within a range. But we would like to bring in people who have the time to do a proper SAT assessment or SAT count, and see how it lines up with ours, and see how the population is doing with a scientific method rather than our method.
Yep. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Matt, stay with us. We've got some other questions in the room. Councillor Harriman.
Thanks, Matt. Just a question on the koalas. I don't know whether you can answer or not. Is it true that they're genetically diverse to other forms of koalas, that they actually have, like the Strzelecki koala is quite unique in its genetic makeup?
It is very unique. Back many years ago, when koalas were hunted almost to extinction, and through land clearing and other means, they discovered populations in gullies through the Strzelecki's, and when the scientific methods became available, it was discovered that these are a very unique strain. They're the purest strain of koalas left in the country. Most Victorian koalas come from a very narrow gene pool from 3 koalas off French Island many years ago, having been used to restock the state. Ours are also the largest koalas in the country, with our largest male recorded at 16.5 kilos. Which is twice the size of a Queensland koala. And they're also the most disease-free koalas in the country. So we have a very important population right on our doorstep. And again, I think it's something that Latrobe City could embrace and really run with.
That, you've probably just answered my next question, Matt. They are chlamydia-free, aren't they? It's one of the most...
As far as I'm aware, they are.
Yeah,
yes,
no,
I can't say for 100% certain, but as far as I'm aware, our population is free of that disease.
And that's probably the only population left in Victoria in that state, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, it would be, and with the narrow gene pool for the rest of the state, they are very prone to picking up diseases, including that.
Yep.
Whereas ours have a bit of a natural, immune system or immunity to such things.
No, thanks, Matt. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Harriman. Councillors, any further questions for Matt? No. Matt, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Okay, councillors, we'll now continue to move on through the meeting agenda. Next on the agenda, we have item 7, strategic items for decision. There are 3 reports listed under this section tonight. The first is 7.1, submission to new separation distance and landfill buffer guidelines, commencing on page 7 of your agenda. Councillor, do I have a motion? Councillor Middlemiss.
So moved.
Councillor Middlemiss is... Oh, damn, I was head down too much there. Okay, councillor's going to rely on your honesty here. Who was first? Councillor Gibson. Seconding? We have Councillor Middlemiss moving, Councillor Gibson seconding. Do I have any opposition, councillors? No opposition. Back to you, Councillor Middlemiss. Would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is a proposal by the EPA to increase the buffer zones around the coal mines in Latrobe City. I mean, my first question is where did this come from? Which Melbourne-based public servant suddenly decided this was a great idea? We've had coal mining since 1921, over 100 years, 102 years, and now with somewhere between 7 and 12 years left of coal mining, we decide to change the rules. The worst part about this whole proposal, if you're a resident of the valley, you'll be able to characterise the three mines in the level of dust problems. If you're a Mall resident, you'll almost certainly nominate the now non-active Hazelwood Mall mine as the biggest source of dust. It is a problem throughout Mall. Residents of Tyres will point to your lawn, and I don't think many people point at Loyang simply because in strong westerly wind changes, the dust from there wanders out towards Rosedale. But why the EPA have suddenly decided to introduce these extra buffers, which will impact planning around Trelgan, will impact planning around Moe quite substantially, and will hold up the orderly planning and development of the valley. That's one issue. The second issue is the biggest offender is the Mall Hazelwood mine as far as dust is concerned, and the EPA's definition of a mine is they have to be digging coal. So these regulations will do nothing to address the worst dust problem we have. So I have no idea where this came from. No consultation with the council. The council actually covers the area. It just came out of the blue. They've announced this and have given us time to come back with a comment. So what we're saying here, and people can read what we're saying to them, is, if I could summarise, what the hell are you doing? This ranks up there in recent decisions by the EPA, up there with their purple top extra rubbish bin that they're forcing on people for the one Vegemite jar that they'll throw out every month. There is no rational, clear thinking behind this. We've been mining coal for 102 years. We have between 7 and 12 years left, and if you talk to industry insiders, about 10 years. To suddenly come along and we'll save you, and we'll ignore the worst one, is just irrational. There are significant developments which we have already approved, which we have already welcomed, which suddenly now appear to be impacted by these. So we've been very nice. We're saying, justify it. Why have you done it? Opposition comes later, but this is a very straightforward request. Tell us why. Thank you.
Middlemiss. Councillor Harriman.
Just a question, Madam Mayor. Is it too late to say I want to speak in opposition to this motion? And if I do speak in opposition to it, does that mean Councillor Middlemiss gets another 3 minutes to close?
Yeah. I would allow it, Councillor
Thank
Harriman.
you. I would like to register
Record
that
you as opposition.
Opposition. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. So on the basis of that, seconded to speak or reserve? And then I'll come back to you, Councillor Harriman.
Well, I should have reserved. Okay, Madam Mayor. Look, I'm happy for our submissions to go in. As Councillor Middlemiss said, there's a lot of questions that we have. Where's the justification for the changes? And what strikes me is, do the government departments actually talk to one another? Because as we speak, another government department is looking at the proposed Commonwealth Games site, which is actually covered in the buffer site that they wish to do. So are they not talking with one another? So some of your comments I would agree with, Councillor Middlemiss. So I think it's fair and reasonable that we actually ask for the justification for this, the changes, and a review. I would also like to know about the guidelines, but this is actually going to impact so much of our land going forward on all towns. So, you know, if it's safety and everything, why is it now and it wasn't before? Because there are houses that are built that are actually in this buffer zone that they're talking about now. So what happens to them? You know, are they safe or not? Okay, do they get bought out? You know, there's a hell of a lot of questions that really need to be answered for this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Harriman.
On the grounds of integrity, Madam Mayor, I will start off by saying I'm sure that the EPA is well aware that due to climatic changes, dust particles now travel further than they used to in the last 102 years. And where in the past year they may only have travelled 1 kilometre, I'm sure they're now travelling 2 kilometres and the EPA is aware of it. However, having made that point, what's really important to note is that with the Loy Yang and the Yallourn extension, we lose 580 future household sites. What this does is, particularly with the next area that Council was going to open up to housing, of which there's a huge shortage in Latrobe City, was the southeast section of Traralgon, and it takes that completely out. Now, theoretically, there was meant to have been a report that would have taken a year to provide, meant to have been handed down by the Minister last September, hasn't been done, and this is probably the reason why. So it's been obvious that they've known about this for quite some time, and as Councillor Middlemiss rightly pointed out, it's something that has had an effect for 102 years and that we've been aware of. What they're doing by putting this buffer out to 2Ks is putting pressure on an already strained housing market, putting pressure on an already strained rental market, and it's also taking out the next 2 zones that Council was going to actually put their housing into to help with this issue. So not only is it the fact that they haven't consulted with this Council over it, it's also the fact that they haven't even looked at where we were looking at trying to fit our population growth in, and where we were trying to relieve the huge stress on affordable and social housing right across this municipality. In Traralgon at the moment, you can't buy a block of land for love nor money. In Morwell, you can't buy a block of land for love nor money. And these are the 2 areas that are most heavily impacted by this decision. And as Councillor Gibson rightly pointed out, we have an announcement from one government department saying they're going to build a games village for 1,000 athletes in an area that, if this goes ahead, they're not going to be able to do. And I just find it dumbfounding that the EPA has come up with this without having even bothered to even come and speak to the local council and the local community and find out the effect it's going to have. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Question, Councillor Gibson.
Yeah, and guide me if you want. Just a question, because we're saying we endorse our submission, which is asking all the questions, but Councillor Harriman is opposing that, but the points he's saying is actually what we're asking in our submission. So I was just asking for you for or against our submission.
I spoke against at the start, which was for the dust now being able to travel 2 kilometres, not once, which enabled Councillor Middlemiss to have another 3 minutes.
You can
at the
read.
end of
Yeah,
Could have told me that.
it's a move. Sorry. So Councillor can raise.
We should run a workshop on tactics.
That's right. Yeah, Councillor can raise opposition and then speak in any way they wish in relation to the matter. Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Hope that's clear. Councillor Clancy.
It did sound like you were very much on our side, Councillor Harriman. So yeah, that's right. So I wanted to speak in support of the submission, and Councillor Middlemiss has certainly covered everything that I think needs to be said. I just wouldn't mind noting in the report, and certainly for the community to note, that while we're putting in this submission, this is a written submission to the proposal that they've put forward to us, and as Councillor Middlemiss and Councillor Harriman have spoken about, is that there has been there's no consultation or no one sitting around a table with us talking about it. They've put this forward and they've asked for our submission, and our submission reads like this. It says, Latrobe City Council does not understand the justification for the increase, considering that the mines have been operating at this distance for a significant amount of time, and therefore would request this change not be made, which is essentially what Councillor Middlemiss has said, and what Councillor Gibson was also saying in the conclusion part of what we've submitted here to the EPA is Latrobe City is generally supportive of the guidelines from the separation distances. However, there are some concerns around the aspect of the guidelines, and people can read this, as Councillor Middlemiss said, in our report. It is published in our agenda publicly, and people are available. That Latrobe City Council have requested a few changes, and we require some further detail on the guidelines. And some of those guidelines and the detail that we're after there and the changes that we're asking for is do not increase the separation distance from an open cut mine is essentially the crux of it. And the final point out of the 5 points that we've put in our submission is provide details on how the guidelines are proposed to be implemented. So what is it going to look like? This is what we're asking, is that there's not much detail in that, and we are very much after the detail, so we can go back to our community, we can go back to developers, and we can go back to the officers here at council and give them some surety on the way that we're going to develop into the future. We're putting this submission in. It's a written submission that people can read. Generally, we are supportive of some of the guidelines, and we're after some further detail, and we'd really like that to come back once we've submitted this proposal and this submission to the EPA. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Any other councillor wish to speak? No? Councillor Middlemiss, would you like to close, given you've been afforded the opportunity in a generous manner by one of your colleagues?
And thank you, Councillor Harriman, for affording me the opportunity to close. However, Councillor Harriman then gave my closing speech.
Oh.
So can I just reiterate what I said? It will hold up the orderly planning and development of the valley. There are housing estates which we think are required for the orderly development of our area, which now are under a cloud. EPA might argue they're under a cloud of dust. I even wonder about Latrobe Valley Bypass, the Trollgan Bypass. Where does it fit in this with the extension of the buffer zone? So there are more questions than there are answers in this current proposal. I cannot see any outcome of implementing the current buffers which are not a negative for the valley. I emphasise we've been digging coal for 102 years. We have suffered the inconvenience of dust. I take Councillor Harriman's point. We've suffered the inconvenience of dust for some time. We've got about, in my estimate, 10 years before all these mines go. And suddenly, the whole game changes. Why? Give us the detail. As Councillor Clancy has said, there are a myriad of questions we want answers for. I would imagine when we get these answers, it'll be raised again at this council meeting, and we might have specific detailed opposition. But until we get the details, we can't really focus the opposition. So I actually urge councillors to support this motion, despite what Councillor Harriman did, so that we can at least say to the government, come on, let's sit down and rationally discuss this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillors, we have had a number of speakers. We will now put the motion to the vote. Those in favour: Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. And just in case anyone's wondering, yes, Councillor Harriman can indicate opposition and then vote in whatever way he wishes at the conclusion of the debate. It's complicated, said Councillor Middlemiss, absolutely. We're moving on to the second item. 7.2 is the landslip remediation delegation commencing on page 25 of the agenda. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Gibson, moving. Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Have any opposition, councillors? No opposition on no opposition on this occasion. Councillor Gibson, to you.
Oh, look, just really quickly, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move this motion because we have had a lot of landslips from the different events that have gone down in the past, and this is about awarding the contracts to actually fix the damn things.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Middlemiss, to speak or reserve?
I think Councillor Gibson's covered everything. If people were to read the report, you cannot deny the logic. We need to acquire the land to solve the problem of the landslip in that area. So this is a slam dunk in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillors, any other speakers? No other speakers. Given there was no opposition on this occasion, there's no opportunity for the mover to close, but we have had speakers, so we will put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, councillors: Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Councillors, we're moving on to item 7.3. This is the 2023 appointment of councillors to committees. It commences on page 29 of the agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clancy. Second, it was Councillor Gibson. Do I have any opposition, councillors? No opposition. Councillor Clancy, would you like to speak to this one?
Very briefly, Madam Mayor, this is very procedural. Every year, the council is required under the legislation of the Local Government Act to ensure that we are appointing our councillors to the committees that they sit on throughout the 12-month period. These are statutory committees that council is required by legislation to have: advisory committees, community asset committees, and other council committees and groups, and external committees that we would have councillors sit on as well. The councillors go through a process of working out their interest and their area, their just geographical area, as well as their area of external expertise as well, and they sit on those committees, assist community to run their own committees, much like we talked with a Friends group before. The community asset committees help with our bushland reserves, and the Friends groups like that. Advisory committees advise council back on policy and position that we might have when making decisions on things like disability action plans or cultural diversity action plans and things like this. So the advisory committees play a strong role in providing council with a voice of the community. The members of these committees are elected and appointed by council, but the councillors need to be appointed as well. They need to get their spot as well. So this, in this report, you'll see that all of the committees are listed in the attachment, and shows where councillors will be working over the next year. And then we'll come back this time next year and probably have those same positions again that we have had, because most councillors stay on for their term to get the work done with the community. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Gibson, to speak or reserve? Nothing from you. Councillor, any other councillor wish to speak in relation to committees? Councillor Howe.
Just very quickly, but thanks, Madam Mayor. Just like what we generally do is we grab committees that we have an interest in or we have a passion for. I encourage the community to have a look, because a lot of these committees do need volunteers to help them. So, for example, I'm on the Railway Reserve Committee. If you're walking through the Railway Reserve and you think, geez, I like this, I wouldn't mind getting involved, make an inquiry about jumping on the committee, or any other committee that you might think might catch your interest, because like I said, we're always looking for volunteers and fresh ideas. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Howe. Councillors, any further speakers? No further speakers. There's no opposition, so there's no opportunity for Councillor Clancy to close. We have had speakers, so we'll put the motion to the vote. Those in favour: Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That one is carried unanimously. I note you, Councillor Harriman. Can I get you to hold tight for a moment?
Yep.
As we head into 8.1, I need to allow Councillor Middlemiss the opportunity to leave. And I'll just do the read, Councillor Harriman, and then I'll come to you. So this is our third report listed in this section tonight. This is 8.1. This is use of development of land with a childcare centre and display of business identification at 50 to 52 Southwell Avenue, Newborough. It starts on page 52 of the agenda. Councillor Middlemiss has declared an interest and has left. So he's now outside of the chamber. Councillor Harriman has indicated a desire to speak, move or otherwise.
Move an alt if I may, Madam Mayor.
Councillor
An
Harriman.
alternative motion.
An alt. For those of you following along on the written agenda, Councillor Harriman is proposing an alternate to what has been provided by the officers. We'll just give everyone a chance to familiarise themselves. Councillor Gibson, I note you. Oh, Councillor Law and Gibson, I note you both jumping up at the same time, which makes it very difficult.
I'd like to foreshadow an alternative motion if this one fails, Madam Mayor.
Okay. I'd like to second.
Okay, can I just get this really clear? You're seconding Councillor Harriman's, you're foreshadowing the potential, sorry, you're seconding the potential for shadow on the basis if... Yeah, that's, so this one, the live one. Gotcha. Councillor Harriman has moved an alt, it's on the screen if everyone can familiarise themselves with that. I know Councillor Law. Councillor Gibson is seconding the alt on the screen. Councillor Law, don't let me forget, in the event that this is lost, you're foreshadowing another alt. Crystal. That works?
I don't think a foreshadow can happen until there's a seconder.
That will, yeah. Okay, so we're just going to go back and...
Okay, well, we did it in the right order.
We have a
then.
seconder. Councillor, yeah, you're foreshadowing. Everyone clear on where we're at? Great, okay. We have a mover, we have a seconder, we have a listed foreshadow in the event that it is lost. Do we have any opposition, councillors? Councillor Law? Okay, we go Councillor Law in opposition. Okay, just want to keep this straight. Can get a little bit complicated. Okay, back to Councillor Harriman to speak to his alt.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. There's actually 4 points. We can only see one up there, but that's okay.
Councillor Harriman, could you just wait for a minute then? Just on the basis of that, can I just make sure, are all the councillors aware of all the points that we're debating? There's a copy in front of you. Councillor Ferguson, can I check you've got your copy, you've got yours by email?
Certainly do.
Great.
Yep.
Okay, we're still good to go. Sorry, Councillor Harriman, back to you.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. There's 2 main points and they tie in with the speaker we had tonight, Nadal Pugsley, on this development. 2 main points are point 2 and point 3. The proposal is inconsistent with the purpose and decision guidelines of the Neighbourhood Residential Zone and Schedule 4 to Clause 32.09 of the Latrobe Planning Scheme for a non-residential use and development in a residential area, as the scale and intensity of the proposed childcare centre, even dropping it to 85 from 95, is not in keeping with the existing neighbourhood character of the area. Point 3 is the proposal is inconsistent with the purpose of 52.06, which is car parking of the Latrobe Planning Scheme, and this has been one of the major objections from a lot of the people in the area, as the likely car parking demand and associated traffic movements for the proposed use will adversely affect the amenity of the locality, and the car park and access design does not enable safe, easy and efficient use, especially considering the existing car parking and traffic issues associated with the primary school directly opposite on the other side of Southwell Avenue. To put it very bluntly, Madam Mayor, we have a number of childcare facilities across this city that have car parking issues, and this is far too large to go in the site. We already have sites causing car parking issues. We know that most childcare facilities during the day are holding children under 5, and as Ms Pugsley pointed out, it's 1 to 11 for kids over, I believe, 8, but over 8?
No, 36 months.
36 months. Underneath that, I think it is 1 to 5 or thereabouts. 1 to 4.
Happy to put the question to the officers if you'd like it clarified, or we're
We'll
generally
get
we're
there.
talking in a
General,
quantum
yeah.
of numbers. Thank you, Councillor.
When we look at the car parking of only 20 car parks on site, it just isn't enough. When we're looking at staff, when we're looking at changeover of staff coming in, staff leaving, there's going to be less car parking available. And considering most kids are dropped off, as Mrs Pugsley rightly pointed out, at a similar time, this is just going to cause a huge problem. This is in a residential zone. The fact that there's a school across the road shouldn't impact on it. The fact that it's in a residential zone, we've seen childcare facilities in residential zones cause huge dramas in other areas. We know that there's a safety issue associated with this as well. we've had schools in the area that have actually had to put in drop-off and pick-up zones because of the car parking around their area and the dramas that it's caused and the near misses we've had. And this is going to cause so many more headaches, and I just believe it's not in the right place. And if they're going to do it, then they need to put in a lot more car parking and a drop-off and pick-up facility, because it won't work otherwise. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillor Gibson, to speak or reserve? Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Clancy?
I have a question, if I couldn't, or I'm happy to wait until the others have spoken.
Your call. You can ask a question now if you want.
It's actually through to the officers around the traffic report that was done with this. The traffic report is not supplied in the agenda as it's published tonight. And I just wanted to ask whether the traffic report, my question was the traffic report that was submitted with the application, I'm presuming that when the application was made, there was a traffic report. Did the traffic report talk about the congestion and pickups and drop-offs and peak times and those sort of things? Because we're talking about 95 places. I presume that unlike a kindergarten, it's not a drop-off time at 8:30, it's a childcare centre that staggers, and I wonder whether the traffic report talked to that and whether that would give us, better indication of that.
Thank you,
That was my
Councillor
question.
Clancy. Through to CEO, either for your response or the appropriate GM.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. We'll pass this one to the General Manager, City Assets and Presentation, Jody Reardon. So I'll hand over to you, Jody. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, the peak traffic movements expected for the facility is 76 movements in any 1 hour. Sorry, councillors, can you hear me now? Yep, apologies about that. And the peak traffic movements is 76 traffic movements per hour. Based on the assessment undertaken by our engineers, we feel that the surrounding road network is capable of accommodating that level of traffic movement.
Thanks.
Councillors, any further questions while we have the GM speaking to this? Any further questions? Otherwise, I'll go to Councillor Law in opposition. Thanks, Jody. Councillor Law, you're next up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to clarify also that we have a couple other childcare centres that are actually in residential zones. We have one that I think is probably in the worst place in Newborough, is Little Saints, right opposite Guns Gully. The access in and out of that childcare centre, which would have the similar amount of children, is right onto a main road, and I think it is horrendous watching adults get in and out. So I don't have an issue, and I'm glad that the traffic engineer's report we just found is basically 1 and a bit per minute to go into that centre and will be handled. We do have another one that is just closed, that was opposite the New World. That was another childcare centre that was there. So I don't have an issue. I know it's double storey, which is a little bit unique for what we do in Latrobe City, but this is common practice in the Melbourne CBD areas, within Melbourne areas. So I find it does fly, and I think it is a good point, the fact that it is close to a school, because it actually gives parents, they're not traversing across town to various childcare centres. They do have an option if that child is at that one school to be in 2 places at the same time, and I think it does have some bonuses. So I'm happy to be against this amended motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillors, any other speakers? Councillor Howe.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Madam Mayor. I support this project 100 or 95%. The only issue I have is the parking. I think it's in a good location. It's near the school, which would help a lot of parents who are dropping off both. It's in an area of town which needs that sort of facility. And I'm glad that that question was asked to our General Manager. If our traffic team does think that the infrastructure that's there can handle the extra 76 traffic movements per hour. What were the foreshadowed, which everybody has, shows that the applicant is willing to drop the number of children from 95 down to 85. What that'll do is drop the at least drop the number of staff on hand on site from 15 down to 30. That's working on their modelling, of course, which will free up 6 or 7 car parks for drop-off or for parents, or 6 plus 1 disabled. So I think that's a lot more palatable, and I'm happy that they've agreed to move on that. So
Sorry,
against this one,
go.
happy to go for the foreshadowed alternative. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor Howe, I thought you'd finished. Could I just ask you to clarify, when you gave the numbers of reduction of the staff, 15 down to
13.
13?
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, 13. Sorry.
No, that's perfectly fine. Thank you very much. Councillors, any other speakers in relation to this? No, Councillor Gibson, I believe you reserved.
I did, Madam Mayor. Now, I agree with what Councillor Law was saying about the Narracon Drive one, but if I remember correctly, the officers agreed with the parking with that too. So you can see that, well, while the book might say it's safe and it's right, it doesn't make it so. Now, I travelled along there every day, morning and night, daily for years, and there is a real issue. I agree with the concept. If they actually had have brought this before us with a solution to the car parking, whether once the CFA moves, they do a deal with council to have in the medium strip the car parking for the staff there, that would actually allow for the mums and dads for drop off there. That would make it a hell of a lot safer, and that would make sense. I have no problem with that. Now, normally you don't have a hell of a lot of staggered drop off times, especially in the morning. And if you look at the actual movements, it's mainly in the morning that it's so congested. So I agree we need a childcare centre. I have no problem with that. If they brought it back, addressing the car parking, not a problem. But like it is actually going to be, as Councillor said, so dangerous with the car parking. And we live and breathe what goes down at Narracon Drive now, and we're going to do this again with even more, because you have all the school kids there as well. So I like it is, and to drop it by 10, I note that they have tried to do a bit of wriggle room, but they're not addressing how most of that car parking will be taken up with staff. So I'm sorry, like it is, no, it is too dangerous for the residents and the kids. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Harriman, did you wish to close?
Yep, I have a question first, if I may, through you, Madam Mayor.
Sure.
Just through you, what is the normal movements from a normal house lot that is expected and used on a residential block?
And I'm very grateful that you said through me, because that indicates that I can pass it on to the CEO, who I'm suggesting may actually pass it to the back of the room, potentially.
Through you, Madam Mayor, based on my past engineering experience from years gone by, it used to be around 10 movements per day is what traffic engineers used to base it on, but I'm getting the thumbs up from the back of the room, so my engineering knowledge is stuck there in relation to that simple little fact.
Done
About
well.
10 movements per day.
Thanks, thank you, Mr. CEO, Madam Mayor.
Sorry, did Jody want to speak too? You're good?
No, he's
happy on the thumbs up? Okay, we're good on the thumbs up.
Thanks,
Councillor Harriman, go ahead.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I will explain my reasoning for that. I thought it was a bit less. We're looking at this site taking up 2 housing lots. So when we talk about 76 movements per hour, we're going from 20 movements per day, which by my quick mathematics comes out to about 1.5 movements per hour. We're talking 74 car movements per hour more from the same site. That is not something you'd expect in a residential zone. And I know we have childcare and kindergartens in residential areas at the moment, and it's a dog's breakfast. We're causing so many dramas in those areas. This is an exceedingly large childcare facility. It's not in the right spot. It's going to increase the traffic, as we've just said. The traffic movements are going up 74 movements per hour. This is 2 residential blocks, 1.5 movements per hour on average now, up to 76. That is going to have a huge impact on the area. It may be acceptable within a traffic management plan, but as we've seen tonight with the EPA on an earlier one, some bureaucrats just don't get it. I will leave it at that, Madam Mayor. I would ask my fellow councillors to actually listen to the local residents in the area and vote on what they believe is right. There are other sites that this could go that are more suitable, and the car parking could be facilitated.
Councillor Harriman, could you stop for a minute? I'm really sorry. I'm going to stop the clock at 1:30 for Councillor Harriman if we can do a reset. I've lost Councillor Ferguson.
Due to a technical issue, Madam Mayor, her computer's just had a meltdown.
Okay, we're just going to take an adjournment. Councillor Harriman, are you happy to come back and conclude the debate at your... I'm going to give you 1.5 ready to go.
About 3 seconds to go, so quite happy to, Madam Mayor.
No, it's all right. Okay, councillors, we're going to adjourn for 5 to allow us to reconnect Councillor Ferguson and give time for the computer to reboot. Take a break, grab a cuppa if you want, then we'll be back. Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for that. The joys of technology got ahead of us on that one, but we're now ready to go. Now, as we left the meeting, Councillor Harriman was addressing Council in relation to item 8.1. This is the matter relating to the use and development of land with a childcare centre and display of business identification in Southwell Avenue, Newborough. It's on page 52 of our agenda. Councillor Harriman literally got cut off part way through. He still had a minute and a half to go. Councillor Harriman, I'm happy for you to take the full 3 minutes or the minute and a half and an extension. You take whatever you need.
Won't need it, Madam Mayor. I'll need about 20 seconds.
Go for it.
I just wanted to say what we're looking at in closing with traffic movements on this site, irrelevant to drop numbers or whatever, with movements we've got there at the moment, it's the equivalent of putting 40 units onto 2 residential blocks of land. Think about it that way. That's the type of traffic we're increasing in this site in a residential area. Now, as somebody that has a house on a street that's fairly busy anyway, adding that to the neighbouring properties would be absolutely horrendous, and I don't think it's fair on the residents that live in that area. There are other sites that are available. There are other sites that are better suited, and I know that we need childcare centres, but there's a place for everything, and this is not the place. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, I need to stop because I didn't have my microphone on. Councillor Ferguson, just to clarify, Councillor Harriman has closed. So I now have to put the motion to the vote, and this is in relation to the alt. Those in favour? Councillors Gibson and Harriman. Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, you're for the alt? Yep, thank you. Councillor Ferguson, I'm also going to let you know you may have a delay, so feel free, if that happens at any point, to wave or get in the chat or anything like that. I think we've got a slight delay. So those in favour, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman and Councillor Ferguson. Those against the alt, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund and myself. So the alt motion is lost, but that brings us to a foreshadowed motion from Councillor Law. Councillor Law, do you have the details available? I think the councillors have a copy of the alt. It's the highlighted yellow. Thank you very much. Councillors, do you all have access to that? Okay, level of comfort there. So Councillor Law is moving the second foreshadowed. This is the alt. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Howe is the seconder. Do I have opposition? Councillor Harriman in opposition. Councillor Law, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, just clearly, this alt is just reducing the number from the 95 to 85, which reduces staff by 2, which frees up 2 extra car parks for the site. But I think the critical part about this site is the fact also is that when they sent out the notice of objectives to everybody within the area, only one person next to the site objected. Every other objector is basically 50 to 200, 300 metres away. So it's, and some are, four streets away. So it's clear that the people surrounding the actual site had no objection to it. And it also, I know that the traffic management, everyone is talking about the car movement, but this actual childcare centre actually has an in and out. It has actually 2 access points. It's not a one-way in and one-way out. It's compared to the one on Guns Gully. It actually has 2 entry and exit points. So it does have a far better traffic flow, as shown in our documentation, how cars can move through the actual site. So from that point of view, being only one objector right next door and everybody else a long, long way away, I believe that the majority of people around this site either have no interest or certainly are wanting this to happen. So from that point of view, I'd like to move the alternate motion of reducing the numbers to 85. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Howe? To speak or reserve?
I'll reserve, thanks, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. In opposition, Councillor Harriman.
I've got a question.
Oh, sorry,
Go for it.
Councillor Clancy. has
Sorry,
a
I just had
question.
just a question because, if I could, through you, Madam Mayor, with the in the original published, which was the 95, the officers have provided us information to say that the 95 young people that'll be there trigger a need for 20 car spaces. And now that and I know that Councillor Law just spoke of the reduction in people, does that reduce, or are we still keeping 20 car spaces? I suppose I just want to make sure that we're not, by reducing then reducing, because we talked about those numbers of reducing it from 15 to 13. We want to make sure that that's accurate, that doesn't then trigger so if I could just ask the office,
Through you, Mr CEO.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I'll pass that one straight through to the General Manager. Jodie Redden, thanks. Jodie?
Through you, Madam Mayor. And to answer your question, Councillor Clancy, the number of car parking spaces on site proposed will remain the same at 20 spaces. It won't reduce the proposed number of spaces on the site. The occupancy is what's changed from 95 to 85 children. There's no changes to the car parking layout. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Harriman, to speak in opposition.
No, I think I've stated my position more than enough, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Gibson?
He's laughing at me. Pardon? It is a really hard situation, and if it wasn't for kids and safety, a different issue.
Councillor Gibson, are you on mic?
Yeah.
That's okay, just Councillor Ferguson's
And
having trouble hearing
actually,
you.
if they change where they actually are siting it, and you had the entry exit on Old Sale Road, which is a larger road, that would be a better option too, because Southwell Avenue is so narrow. So, look, we do need childcare. If you actually had the childcare on the old East Newborough primary school site, you'd be laughing, because it's large enough. All right, they bought the two houses there, develop it and go and get that one, would be what I would do, and it would be safe. But if you had issues about the safety for Narracon Drive, this is so much worse. And I say that because I would drive it every day. So, look, we do need childcare, but like it is, if they haven't addressed the extra car parking and the safety, whether they change where they actually site the centre, whether they actually have a conversation with council about the parking in the middle of the medium strip for the staff. You know, there are different ways that they could actually address the safety, and that's the only reason I'm voting against it. It is the safety for the kids.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Any other councillor wish to speak? No. Councillor Howe, you reserved.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. I'll just briefly speak. I spoke a bit before on Councillor Harriman's alternate motion. It's a good development. It's a much needed facility for Newborough that they can use. It met all the regulations. It met our traffic team was happy with it when it was at 95. They've gone the extra yard to agree to 85, which makes it safer. There's going to be six spots plus a disabled for for people to unload and to collect their children. Unload children, that was a bad one. To drop their children off and to collect their children. So I'm happy to not only second this but fully endorse the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. As we've had opposition, it gives you the right to reply. Councillor Law, did you wish to close?
Just briefly, Madam Mayor, I'd just like to appeal to the councillors that this type of development in the old area of Newborough, which has lacked this type of service for a long period of time, is something that is much needed for the newer people that are actually moving into that area that have young children. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillors, we've had speakers. We now have to put this foreshadowed alt to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Howe, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund and myself. Those against, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Ferguson. The alternate motion is carried. Thank you very much, councillors. Can we please retrieve Councillor Middlemiss? He's tried to help you out, you know, he can't fix everything for you. Welcome back, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillors, we're now moving on to item 8.2, use of development for land for a dwelling at Jumbuck Road, Yanar South. It starts on page 115 of your agenda. Councillors, we did mention previously that we may need to take an adjournment to gather some further information in answer to a question put by Councillor Clancy. The CEO has that information available. I don't think we require an adjournment, but I will provide the CEO with the opportunity to respond to that question now.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. So, in relation to this item, I've sought some advice from the team in relation to the timing and what's occurred in terms of the application. So, just to summarise, as part of a request for further information to the applicant back in mid-2022, there were some concerns identified from officers, and that identified as part of that correspondence that council wasn't likely to support the application. And at that point, the way the wording was like that was because the application was going to be considered under delegation by myself. So the advice to the applicant was that it wasn't likely to be considered by, supported by council. That then progressed through to the point at which councillors were advised as part of our regular updates, which we do on a weekly basis to councillors, advising of applications that are going to be refused, and that was in early December. And I understand that the applicant was advised at that time that that was the case, that the application was to be refused. That application was subsequently called in on the 8th of December to be considered at a future council meeting, which is obviously the next available council meeting, which is this meeting. The officer's recommendation included in the council agenda, and the report was made available to the public on our website, as well as to the applicant at that time. So the applicant was advised on the 2nd of February at the same time that we do for the public, and that's our standard process in relation to when people are notified formally that what the council officer's recommendation is, although in this case we had provided that previous advice. And the applicant, as I said, was advised in writing that was on the agenda, and also of the process to speak to council at this meeting.
Councillors, any questions in relation to that? Councillor Clancy?
The CEO might be able to answer this. Is it when the application was going to be refused under delegation, they'd obviously been notified. When it's been called in, is the applicant notified that it's been called in, either by officers or from the councillor who called it in?
Yes. The applicant is advised that it has been called in because of the time that's then required for it then to go to a council meeting, advised of that process.
Councillors, any further questions in relation to that one? No? Okay, then we'll move into consideration of the matter. So this is 8.2, use and development of land of dwelling, Jumbuck Road, Yanar South, commencing a one. Councillor Gibson, question or moving? Neither? moving just a deferral. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Ferguson? Sorry, take
Sorry, just to get clarity, I haven't actually seen a deferral before. So when would this be deferred to?
So procedural deferral would bring it back to the next meeting. We'd go immediately to a vote and there wouldn't be any debate in relation to that matter, Councillor Ferguson. So it basically pushes the item to the next meeting, which would in effect give the opportunity for the proponent to catch up on the information and come back to us for consideration of matter. Can I just confirm timing in relation to this? Do we then end up outside of any other windows, just so there's a fullness of availability of information?
That was a question, sorry, I didn't realise partway through that question it was right. Councillor Clancy had indicated, had asked a question very similar in terms of what would happen. So I think it does, and it might already be, I need to check the General Manager in terms of timeframes. The applicant may have the opportunity to take the matter to VCAT rather than it notice for a lack of determination by council within a certain time frame. But that's in most cases unlikely. The matters normally come back before council, and that would be in the following month.
Okay. Comfortable with that explanation, Councillor Ferguson? Understand that? Councillor Middlemiss?
If you foreshadowed that if it was deferred, it would give the applicants an opportunity to come back and provide further information. Does that same deferral period allow officers to comment on further information? In other words, produce a further report?
Through you, Madam. I need to check with the governance team. So normally in the past our procedural deferrals have been such that the same report comes back to the council meeting. We can provide information to councillors outside of that report process as to what's occurred, but normally we don't amend the council report through a procedural deferral. So I'll just check that's the same in our governance rules. Same report. Yep, is the advice I'm receiving. So that's...
If I could just elaborate a little,
Madam
Mayor. What I'm concerned about is if, when the applicants come back with further information, etc., it does contradict the report that we have before us, are the officers able to submit a further report?
In terms of, we certainly can provide councillors with further information in terms of what was included in the agenda in terms of the governance rules as it's written at the moment, and as I understand it would be basically the same report comes back. So we can certainly provide councillors with further information outside of that. The risk with that is though that it doesn't become public information, it's circulated to councillors, it's not part of the public process.
But a councillor could introduce that into debate.
Correct.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Okay, councillors, just checking everyone's comfortable for us to proceed. Councillor Gibson is proposing a deferral. Do I have a seconder in relation to that? Councillor Middlemiss is happy to second that. Do I have any opposition to the deferral? Councillor Clancy in opposition to the deferral. This isn't one that we speak to, it's procedural, but we will move on the basis of that. I just need to, I've got that correct, haven't I? Procedural deferral, straight to vote.
We're just going to check that with the governance team.
Just checking before someone says I didn't give them the opportunity to speak, which is, that's right. The brains trust are checking.
I think, yeah, that's... I think there was a change.
We've changed it, okay. Councillor
governance rules.
Gibson, that gives you the opportunity to speak to the reason for deferral if you so wish. Thank you for the clarification, team.
Thank you. No, I didn't think we
I
were,
didn't think
but
we
that's okay. Look, I think it is so much cleaner if we just have a straight deferral. All the different issues that have been brought up tonight, we can look at those, ascertain whether they're relevant, they're not, before we make a decision, because we're making a decision on people's livelihoods. So that's why I thought it is so much cleaner and quicker to just do a deferral.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Middlemiss, to speak or reserve? Okay, Councillor Clancy in opposition?
Yeah, and very happy with everything Councillor Gibson said, and I agree. I suppose the reason for me to... I have enough information in front of me to make a decision, and I suppose that is where I sort of land. If we're deferring it, we're deferring it for a month. I'm happy with the report that I've read. I'm happy with the presentation that's been given to us. Also aware that this was on a deferral list that was sent to us that was under the delegation of the CEO. It was called in, which is the right of councillors to do that, but I don't see an alt here to say to approve it. So at the moment we are calling it in to refuse it. So that's where we're at, and I'm sort of wondering whether a month away might land us in the same spot. And if we were to not act upon it tonight and refuse, then that doesn't leave the applicant any opportunity, or leaves them with another month to consider their options about a VCAT challenge if they wish to go down that path. And so I suppose I'm happy with the information that's in front of me at the moment, even though I think that also if we were missing information, that I would support that, but I don't at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillor Ferguson.
I'm certainly of the opinion that if the deferment allows the applicant to put forward extra information for councillors, and I just want to clarify that would be the situation.
So, Councillor Ferguson, between any consideration of a matter, any information can be brought up until the point where a decision is made by council, so that won't change. The nature of the structure of the agenda, however, will remain the same, but that also won't stop any discussion in briefing. It also doesn't stop the proponent providing any additional information to councillors either independently or as a group, and it would also allow any other party wanting to speak to this matter at the next council meeting to also come and speak to that matter at the council meeting as well. So effectively enables that opportunity. The only thing that you would see that may look like a bit of an anomaly, just given the conversations, is that the report doesn't alter. So if there is changed information, it would come to us via separate channels, and then councillors would have the option to speak to that at the meeting. Okay. Happy to stand corrected if anyone sees that differently. That's where we're at.
Thank you.
No, absolute pleasure. On that basis, we have had speakers. We did have opposition. Councillor Gibson, that actually gives you the right to close if you so wish.
Just really quickly, look, I would actually encourage I take Councillor Clancy's points, but depending on the information coming back, there may be an alts go up. So at the moment we're looking at refusal, but the information we received tonight, to me, the two don't mix. So I want the answers before I say yay or nay.
Thank you so much, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, on the basis that we've had speakers, we will put this one to the vote. This is the vote to defer. Those in favour: Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. Those against: Councillor Clancy. The motion to defer is carried. Thank you, councillors. That will come back to the next council meeting for information. I note you, Councillor Harriman.
Just have a question, Madam Mayor. I know it's now coming back.
Yes.
Are we able to ask information of the proponents through the officers to seek information that we could use in the debate?
Councillors can independently seek any information that will inform their decision. It would be reasonable for you to put that question to the officers.
Perfect.
It would also be reasonable for you to engage directly with the proponent if that's the nature of the relationship you have with them.
No, I don't.
And then you could use that, so via the officers.
Yep.
I guess the other thing we could also do as a group, if there are questions, when we do discuss it, either in email or when we're together in a briefing, we could bring together any questions we have and ask the officers to get further clarification on those points in advance of the meeting coming back.
Yep.
I think that's reasonably within the limits of the tolerance of the governance rules. I'm looking to the back of the room. Sounds about right. Yep. Okay. So does that help?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, just need some questions on breeding.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, perfect.
No, I think
Thank
that's fine. No, absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thanks for working that through, councillors. We'll continue to move through. Our next item on the agenda, just wait for it to click over, is 8.3. Note you, Councillor Middlemiss. This is the amendment C137 Mall Activity Centre Plan commencing on 161 of your agenda. Moving, Councillor Middlemiss. Thank you very much. Councillors, we have a seconder. Councillor Lund is our seconder. Do I have any opposition, councillors? No opposition. Councillor Middlemiss, back to you.
I think we should at least speak on this one because it is such a significant issue. I've thought what I would say, and then I just had a quick look at the report, and the officers have said it much better than I could. So what I'm going to do now is read 2 paragraphs out of the report. The Mall Activity Centre Plan, MACP, is a visionary document. This is the officers' words, perhaps a bit too much there with visionary, but used to guide and facilitate growth and development within the primary activity centre of Mall over the next 15 to 20 years, and that therefore forms the basis of Amendment C137, which we're discussing now. Amendment C137 implements the land use and development directions for the Mall Activity Centre Plan by introducing new zones, new overlays and local planning policy into the Latrobe planning scheme to improve clarity and certainty for stakeholders about the role of the Mall Activity Centre in delivering increased housing, retail and employment opportunities. Now, what sits behind this resolution is a very big report. There's many days, weeks, months of work by our planning team in compiling that, and I'd certainly commend that report to councillors and the general public. It is a vision for the future of Mall. It gives, as the paragraph I just read out, gives certainty to people as to where Mall is developing in the next 15 to 20 years. There are small parts of it I disagree with, but it would be churlish for me to oppose such an extensive and excellent body of work just on some minor disagreements. So I commend this to council. It gives us some clarity where Mall's going in the next 15, 20 years.
Thank you very much, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillor Lund, you seconded?
Yeah, I only want to acknowledge and thank the officers for their work on this. It is a big body of work and it's gone over a number of years, and I'm not going to repeat everything Graham just said, but I agree.
Thank you, Councillor Lund. Councillors, any further speakers? No. We don't have any opposition. You don't get to close, Councillor Middlemiss, but we will have to put it to the vote. Those in favour, councillors: Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That one's carried unanimously. Thank you so much, councillors. We're now moving on to the items in the agenda. These are corporate items for decision. We've got 3 reports listed in the section tonight, and the first is 9-1 land acquisition at 900 Geraldine West Road, commencing on page 659 of the agenda. Do I have a motion, councillors? Councillor Gibson moving. Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Do you have any opposition, councillors? There's no opposition. Councillor Gibson, did you want to speak?
Just really quickly, Madam Mayor, I'm happy to move this motion because with the land slips, we actually need to buy a part of the land to accommodate the works that are needed to restore the road. So it's badly needed, so it's as simple as that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Middlemiss.
I think it's very clear on this one. To restore the road, you need to acquire this land, and if I'm reading the report correctly, the landowner is in agreement, or close to agreement, so I commend this one.
Thank you so much, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillors, any other speakers? We haven't had any opposition. We'll put it to the vote. Those in favour: Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. The one's carried unanimously also. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to 9.2, Audit and Risk Committee Charter and Internal Audit Charter, commencing on page 665 of your agenda. Do I have a motion, councillors? Sorry, Councillor Law. Seconder, Councillor Howe. Yeah, I'm just acutely aware that you've got a delay, councillor. I wanted to give you the chance to jump in. You're happy to defer too? Thanks so much. So I'm taking Councillor Law as the mover on this one, Councillor Ferguson as the seconder. Thank you so much for that, Councillor Howe. Do we have any opposition on this one? Councillor Law, would you like to speak?
Yes, thanks, Madam Mayor. This is probably one of the most important components of our business, is the audit and risk that we take to look at our business. It has been very well run over the number of years that we've been here on council, us as a group. I'd like to actually thank finance team for where we've got to, and all we're doing here is just making some few tweaks and changes that have been through a working party of both the officers and the Audit and Risk Committee to just update some practices and processes that they believe will just make it a little bit more clearer and cleaner as we move forward. So there's no major changes, other than the fact is that just trying to do due diligence to make it a little bit better document.
Thank you so much, Councillor Law. Councillor Ferguson, you're our seconder. Would you like to speak?
Yes, just similar sentiments to Brad, really, that, you know, well done to the team. A lot of work, it is crucial, and they, time and time again, they present reports and things that are so accurately and so in depth, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Councillor Ferguson. Any other councillor wish to speak? Councillors, we haven't had any opposition, so you don't get the opportunity to close. Councillor Law, put the motion to the vote. Those in favour, Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Lund, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. That one's carried unanimously also. 9.3, authorised donation of council officers under the Planning and Environment Act. Councillor Middlemiss moving, Councillor Lund seconding. Do I have any opposition? Do you wish to speak or procedural, Councillor Middlemiss?
I'm inclined to call this one procedural.
Okay, let's do that. There's no speakers and there's no opposition to this one, and we don't need to put it to the vote. We're just going to carry it unanimously. Thank you so much. Councillors, next on the agenda is items of urgent business. Item 10 on the agenda. Is there any matters of urgent business for consideration, councillors? I'm not aware of any. The CEO doesn't have any. Nothing to consider there, so we'll continue to move through, which brings us back items for noting. These are the 11. So 11.1, Quarterly Budget Report, December 2022. This is on page 706 of your agenda. Do I have a mover? Councillor Clancy and then Councillor Law. Councillor Clancy is our mover. Councillor Law is our seconder. Any opposition? No opposition. Councillor Clancy, did you want to speak to this one?
Noting.
Noting this one. Councillor Law. Happy? Okay, we've had no speakers, no opposition. All clear on that one. We'll consider it carried unanimously. Thank you so much. 11.2, presentation of the Audit and Risk Committee minutes for the 27th of September and the 24th of November 2022, commencing on page 731 of your agenda. Councillor Ferguson, I note you. Moving? Thank you so much. Councillor Ferguson is moving that one. Councillor Law is our seconder. Do we have any opposition? Did you want to speak to that one or procedural, Councillor Ferguson? Up to you.
No, I think I'll be fine. Thank you.
No worries. Nothing from you, Councillor Law? We'll carry those unanimously, councillors. Thank you so much. We don't have any questions on notice at the 12s. We then move through. Sit tight with me for a moment, councillors. We will be heading into 13s in a moment. That's okay, I'm just checking that I've got the right order there. Okay, we are moving into notices of motion. These are items brought by councillors for consideration. So the councillors bring these items that come in your notice for those following along with the hard copy or online. These don't come in with a report. They do come through on the basis of the words generated from the officers based on the nature of the matter they wish to raise or seek support for. There are some limitations to notice of motions that relates to the level of resourcing that can be afforded to them, so in some instances they're required to request a report. Councillors are also provided the opportunity to explore any questions they have with each other, but also with the officers in advance of the meeting. First we've got tonight 13.1, Strzelecki Koalas and Wildlife Rehabilitation Centre, commencing on 7.63. This has been brought to us by Councillor Ferguson. I take it you would like to move your motion, Councillor? We'll just get you a seconder. Do you have a seconder, please? Oh, you two are going to have to split it. Councillor Harriman? Okay, so Councillor Ferguson is our mover. Councillor Harriman is our seconder. Do we have any opposition? Councillor Law in opposition. Councillor Ferguson, would you like to speak to this one, please?
Yes, thank you. And firstly, I'd just like to note that there was a revised version of the motion made after the agenda was printed.
Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, my error. I was aware of that and I didn't. We noted that the nature of the change was not so substantial as to cause an alteration. So yes, it was more of a title and reflection of language. We'll start the clock again. Go ahead, Councillor Ferguson. Thanks for that.
Thank you. So the title was just added botany and entomology. Yes. So with this motion, I call on Council tonight to support the conducting of a feasibility study on the establishment of a Strzelecki Koala Wildlife, Botany and Entomology Centre in the south ward of Latrobe City, focusing on the habitat of Morwell National Park and the surrounding Strzelecki Ranges. An often unrecognised jewel in the crown of Latrobe City is the Morwell National Park. At a substantial 1,400 acres, it's still modest, but compared to some, has a diversity of flora, fauna, fungi and insects found within it that far exceeds that of many other state and national parks, which have many have existing centres nearby of wildlife care, education and scientific study to accompany them. Within its boundaries and surrounds is the most genetically diverse koala species in Australia, the Strzelecki koala, a population needing preservation in our region, and one that holds a genetic key to sustaining all the other species of koala in Australia. A process which will require a professional overseeing, an overseeing that prevents the over-relocation of our koalas from our region over time in the essence of preservation of other species around the entire nation. For such intense and in interstate operations and with so many study groups, I believe this location is ideal, being that we have an airport in our vicinity, ample accommodation, as well as a university based not only 10-minute drive from the Morwell National Park and the Strzelecki foothills themselves. So overall, this is an investment not only for our region, but for the future of koalas in our state and the whole of Australia. So I bring forward this concept and I entrust our council officers to produce a feasibility study in good faith, as I know they will provide a solid and professional and practical study, a solid opportunity for all three levels of government to come together and create something very unique and special for our region and to the betterment of Latrobe City's habitat and economy in a time of transition, a unified effort that is positive with historical outcomes. And this is not unprecedented. There has been centres created where councils have initiated this and all three levels of government have cooperated and worked together to bring them to fruition. So the framework already exists. And our centre is equally important to any of the others that have been built. So to support the feasibility study, which is the first step, and this development is to provide flora, fauna and insect preservation, crucial scientific studies, which are very important, educational opportunities, employment opportunities, and ecotourism benefits.
Councillor Ferguson, sorry, I'm just going to hold you there. I'm going to extend you for another 3 minutes. Please continue.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So not only benefiting the nearby towns of Churchill, Yennart and Ballara, who are in need of economic stimulus, but the whole of Latrobe City. It provides a unique base from which many professionals could operate and come to from interstate or around the nation, and they can achieve many positive outcomes on many levels from this. So with all of that, I call on my fellow councillors to support this presented concept and the first stage of the bringing to life of a centre with absolutely indisputable benefits for the region. One for the residing flora and fauna and for the people of Latrobe City, for the local and nation's precious koala populations, and all of nature's beneficiaries from such a centre in operation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillor Harriman was our seconder to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve, thank you, Madam Mayor.
Reserving, thank you, Councillor Harriman. Opposition, Councillor Law.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I agree with the sentiment that Councillor Ferguson has said, and we're all here for the betterment of our environment, and there's ways that we can do it. I just believe that the process that we're going through, that has been asked of us tonight, is not the right process. There's a few serious and fundamental flaws, I believe. The fact that Morwell National Park has anything to do with Latrobe City Council. It's a state government body. We don't do any work there. We don't have any overarching, maintenance. We're just not part of it. So the actual decision about whether and in points 1 and 2, where we're asking for an educational centre, learning auditorium, and also a dedicated centre for sick and injured koalas and native animals for rehabilitation, we're talking millions of dollars. Like, you know, we're asking our councillors to put a massive report together for something that Parks Victoria could simply just turn around and say, hey, there's no money whatsoever. So from my point of view, we're putting the cart before the horse. You know, the question should have been gone to Parks Victoria, is there any funding for this type of work, and is it possible to come to Morwell National Park? Now, look, to be honest, I hadn't done much work on Morwell National Park until today, and I find that it is the 4th smallest national park in Victoria. There's 45 of them, and I also realise that there's a national park in Churchill I never even knew existed, which is even smaller again. So it's a very small component, but it's got some very key elements in it, and I must admit, one of what Mel has said, I think it was, is there's a lot of orchids and that in there. There's some fantastic stuff in there. About the moths and that, we do that at Edward Hunter because we did it last year, I must admit, and it was quite good. But the other thing is we do have is a koala sanctuary at Rill on Phillip Island. So we actually have a sanctuary already for koalas, which is only, you know, say 80 kilometres away. So that component exists already. Whether the state government is willing to duplicate that for us, I find that very hard to see, because you've got a permanent tourist environment down there on Phillip Island. Why would they put it? And we don't know where it's going to go here, because no one was been able to state where they want it. So I believe we put the cart before the horse. I do believe that a letter should be sent to Parks Victoria to find out if there is any possibility of creating some of points 3, 4 and 5, how we could get some more benefits from Morwell National Park, which I'm happy to support from that point of view. But points 1 and 2 are way beyond Latrobe City Council, and I do not want to waste our officers' time on something that may not happen at all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillors, do I have anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Howe?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just before I start this, I like koalas. I have nothing against koalas. I don't want to open the Express on Wednesday and have Howe hates koalas, because it's not true. Okay. However, this is something that we haven't identified as a priority for this council. It wasn't identified when we conducted our consultation with our community prior to doing our 4-year council plan. I don't believe it is our role to go down this path. At the moment, we're betting in GPAC, we're betting in GRAC, we're developing airport, we're building a racetrack. I simply don't believe that we have the resources, the manpower or the dollars to go down this path at the moment. I think what Councillor Laura said is a lot better idea. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Councillor Clancy's up. Councillor Clancy, Middlemiss. Councillor Middlemiss, you're first up, then Councillor Clancy.
Sure. Thanks, Madam Mayor. First of all, to Councillor Ferguson, I think this is a great idea. I think that the potential that you've talked about, and our speakers tonight who came to us, it's clearly something that is, and maybe that sort of undiscovered gem of potential I look at. When I look at the idea, and certainly in your notice of motion where you've got the potential things there that could be visitor centres and research and those sort of things, it certainly ticks off the tourism aspect, as well as those other sort of environmental, economic and cultural things. And when you look at the triple bottom line, when you've got economic benefit, you've got environmental benefit and a benefit of the culture, it's a really, really good idea. And even though Councillor Howe just noted that it wasn't mentioned in our future planning when we consulted the community, you know, maybe it should have been. Maybe this is something that brings it to the forefront of people speaking about these things, because I do think it's a really good idea. When we look at you know, getting feasibility studies from the officers, and in my 6 years here on this council, I've noted that feasibility studies, some of them we have had to go for budget bids for. Some of them we have had to have special council meetings for to allocate, you know, the figure of, you know, I pick it out there, $50,000 to be able to do a feasibility study. They're the sort of dollars that we either need to partner or apply for a grant for and things like that. We don't have that internal operating budget to, which I think is exactly what Councillor Law's talking about. We don't have that internal officer power, the hours to be able to dedicate to this. But it doesn't mean it's not a good idea. So for me, I think it should be listed on our advocacy piece. I think it should be, our environmental team needs to be talking to Parks Victoria. I think our tourism team need to be talking to Destination Gippsland. We need to be talking about it as a group of councillors and talk about it when we go into our next year. And so we are looking at the CAF, for example, as our big piece, and we're trying to push that and get dollars invested in here for tourism via motorsports. That we need to, as a council group, talk about, do we want to have a look down an environmental path as well? And is that something that, because we know that we certainly need it. We need it in the area, and it's not just in the south ward of Churchill and Yanara and Ballara, as Councillor Ferguson talked about. Well, we need that boost across the city, and we need to look at big visionary ideas. So I commend Councillor Ferguson for coming up with big visionary ideas, and I think that it does have great potential. But I don't think this is the path we need to go down to put our officers in charge of a feasibility study. I think that there are other ways, as the other councillors have mentioned as well. But I do commend you and thank you for bringing it to our attention. It's a great idea.
Thank you, Councillor Clancy. Councillor Middlemiss, you were next.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The key to this motion is that council receives a report. It doesn't actually ask for a full feasibility study. It receives a report. Now, my view is this is a great idea, and I believe the report will come back fairly promptly saying this would be a great idea, being funded by federal, state and some assistance from us. So I'm not prepared to write it off on the basis, oh no, that's beyond us. I mean, I'm not going to say, oh, there's a koala sanctuary at Phillip Island. Guess where they're all related to? They're all off the little island, what's it, French Island, whatever it is, koalas. They're not that species that sits out there. There is a very strong case for the best koalas in Australia to be studied, had a look at and shown to people. So what Councillor Ferguson is asking for is a report. How would this be done? One of the things I would do as an officer is say, okay, there are other places that do this. Who's funding it? Commonwealth? Who's funding it? State? What assistance is the council giving? I've got no problem with a report from officers coming back and saying this is a great idea, but we can't afford it, but we should now advocate for something like this from the various things. And the very starting point as to whether it's worth advocating for is a report. A report, you know, I can tell you the feasibility now, it is not feasible that we could fund it. But that report should come back. So the people of the valley can have a look at it and say, well, we could do this or we couldn't do this, but it would require a lot of political support. But then the seed needs to be sown if we're going to do that. Now, councillors are aware, I don't know if you can remember, but at our last briefing session, we were advised that a critically endangered species of plant has been found in the valley. Critically endangered. It's hanging on by its fingernails. Now, I'm a great believer in biodiversity, and I think this motion points to biodiversity, but I'd hate the valley to be known as the Extinction Departure Lounge. You know, is this thing going to step off its mortal course, step away, never to reappear in the world? We need to be taking a much more proactive role in the environment. This report says, give us a report on that. I do not expect officers to go out and spend 3 months on this report. I expect officers to have a look at wherever the centres like this are around Australia and come back with a report and say, there you are, you can do it. It would cost you exquillions, at which point all those who raise these various projects will go, no way, you know, it's not going to happen. However, these ones are funded by feds and state and locals. I want to see that report. Before I get into a debate as to whether it goes ahead or not, I'd just like to see a report. Are there koala sanctuaries? Is there some merit in this? If this is the best koala in Australia, hasn't got all these diseases, etc., should we not be studying it? Should we not be doing some work around it? Should we be doing something to encourage our biodiversity? I mean, it's a very small national park out there, as Councillor Law says, but sitting behind it is the entire Strzelecki's, a massive area of biodiversity. So I want to see the report. That's all I ask. Just want to see a report, and I expect it to be at a very high level, but then councillors can make up their mind. I'm not prepared to say nah now. And I've got this little grey-leafed plant to look after.
Billy Button.
We have already engaged the Kernai group to try and grow it from the seeds, and then we will put it in our bushland reserve. So we're doing our bit.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak? Oh, sorry, right there, Councillor Gibson. Sorry about that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, I was listening to Councillor Law, and then I actually reread the top line. And you're right, Councillor Middlemiss, receives a report. We're not asking for a feasibility study. If we were asking for one, yep, not a problem. We don't have the money. I get that, but we're not. We're just asking for a report. Now, yes, it's not in the plan, but if we have, nor was the CAF, that wasn't in the plan, but it actually took some ideas, new ideas. Now, same as the mountain bike park, that wasn't in anything either. So, no, wasn't in it, but actually, new ideas have actually put us in a hell of a lot better position. We now have a mountain bike park. We're now moving along with the CAF. So here we have an opportunity, a thought, an idea, a suggestion to have a report about something that could actually turn into ecotourism. You know, we say about the environment all the time. Well, we've got a chance to have a look at what we can do in that area. Now, yes, there might be a sanctuary at Phillip Island, but it's a different koala gene. So this is a different gene pool. So we have an opportunity that nowhere else in Australia actually has, because no one else has got it. So, you know, Phillip Island's got so many different things, whether it be the penguins or whatever, that they are actually the only ones who have. Why can't we be like that? So it's just asking for a report. I'd love to see the report and see, well, potentially, what could we do? No, we can't afford it, but we're not asking to do that. So I'm happy for the report to come back.
Thanks, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, any further speakers? Just about completed the loop. Councillor Ferguson, you got a question? No, question first, then I'm coming back. I've got a little R with a circle around it. Got arrows and everything, so I don't forget, Councillor Harriman. You'd be amazed at the squiggles that go on these forms, so I don't forget. Councillor Ferguson, did you have a question?
Just a statement. Can't I say that?
Can't make a statement. You can ask a question. I'll then allow Councillor Harriman the opportunity to speak to his reserve, and then at the end I'll give you the opportunity to close, at which point you could make a statement. Is that okay?
Yep, that's better. Thank you.
No problem at all. Councillor Harriman, you reserved. Would you like to speak?
Yep, thank you, Madam Mayor. Again, just agreeing with Councillor Middlemiss, it receives a report on the exploring the feasibility. I think that's a major point. It's not a full feasibility study, it's just a report, and I expect exactly what Councillor Middlemiss has proposed. Just in relation to the koalas from the Strzelecki koalas being sent to Phillip Island, to quote a former Federal Minister of Parliament, the Phillip Island koalas and the rest of Victoria's koalas are disease-ridden, urinating flea bags. Any Strzelecki koalas that are actually... That was Federal Member of Parliament describing our favourite cuddly animal. The problem being...
The problem being any Strzelecki koalas that are sent to Phillip Island cannot be returned because of that issue. So while there's a rehabilitation centre over there, we lose them permanently. Again, as Councillor Minimis so rightly pointed out, the koalas from the national park actually spread through the whole of the Strzelecki's, and it's seen as very much a safe zone. Again, with urbanisation happening through the Strzelecki's and more people getting up there, there are obviously, unfortunately, attacks from animals, domesticated and wild animals on the koalas. It provides a base for them, and having a centre there where we could actually look after the koalas and then return them to their native environment is vitally important. And a fact, little known fact, Madam Mayor, I'm actually an orchid lover. I'm a member of a group, the North Queensland Orchid Appreciation Society. People didn't know that, they do now. And I made the point of, and I'm going to get a hell of a lot of work from Matt, I can tell you. I made the point of actually going on to, it's a closed group, and actually putting on there, what do you know about the butterfly orchid? And the number of responses I got and the number of people that actually said, it's on my bucket list, we didn't think it was around, it's on my bucket list, where are they? And when I told them they could come down to Morwell, they said, where is Morwell? I explained where it was. There's a number of people that have actually said they've travelled overseas to go and see orchids. The butterfly orchid is actually considered a rare and beautiful, by orchid lovers, a rare and beautiful orchid, and one they would travel to see. So it just opens up, just putting it out there, Madam Mayor, that it opens it up, that this is a potential tourist attraction that we probably have not tapped into, that I hate to say it, but orchid lovers are a fairly devoted group, as I've found out, and they love their orchids, and this is one of the ones they love. So Matt, you might, if you're still listening, Matt Campbell, you might have some more tours coming up. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. On the basis that we have had opposition and speakers, Councillor Ferguson, you have the right to close. Over
Okay,
you.
thank you. So yes, given that it's a report, I can't see any reason when we could actually be a leader here in Latrobe City and possibly assist the saving of koalas nationwide. Why would we not attempt to, I'll never understand why we wouldn't at least get the report and get the idea out there. So anyhow, but I mean, other than just the orchids, there's people that are absolutely fascinated by the fungi in the park as well. There's the diversity of this exceeds so many national parks, and there's no way that they would take the koalas down towards other species like that who are already diseased, because we are holding the key to the rest of the koalas throughout Australia. And if we can't do something about that, then I find that really sad. And perhaps we'll look back one day sadly and think we could have. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councillor Ferguson. We have had speakers. We will put the notice of motion to the vote. Those in favour? Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. Those against? Sorry, Councillor Ferguson, did I call you then? I'm pretty sure I did. Does anyone need a recount? Are we good? Can I just check with the officers? Councillor, sorry. Did you get everyone? You got Councillor Ferguson? Thank you. Sorry, I just had that moment as I flashed back over the screen whether I'd done it. Those against? Councillor Howe, Councillor Law and Councillor Lund. The notice of motion is carried. Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Councillors, we're now moving on to 13.2. Morwell, apologies, no we are not, because the CEO's told me twice and I wrote it on a piece of paper and I still forgot to do it. Councillors, it's 9 o'clock, so we're required to have an extension. Thank you so much. Councillor Middlemiss, an extension of meeting times. Councillor Harriman was up second. Any opposition? No.
Can I just make the point, I move that begrudgingly.
Noted, Councillor Middlemiss. Councillor Middlemiss is begrudgingly allowing us to continue. If there is any opposition, we'll consider that carried unanimously and we'll continue to move through with the meeting. Thank you to the CEO for trying to get my attention and keep me focused. We will now move on to 13.2. Morwell GovHub Employment Opportunities. This commences, I'm sorry, Councillor Lund has declared, again, where I have the piece of paper sitting right in front of me and I still can't read it. Councillor Lund is declaring a conflict on this one and leaving the room. So we'll just allow Councillor Lund the opportunity to move. We've got people waving because they're leaving. Thanks for joining us this evening. Councillor Middlemiss has eaten all the biscuits, so Councillor Lund is heading out there into an abyss of darkness and no sustenance because Councillor Middlemiss ate all the biscuits. No. Okay, everyone's cleared away and the gallery is somewhat reduced. 13.2, this is the Morwell GovHub Employment Opportunities commencing on page 764 of the agenda. This is a notice of motion brought to us by Councillor Gibson. Councillor Gibson, so moving, I suggest. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Law. Do I have any opposition? No opposition. Councillor Gibson, back to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Look, so many times we have been given promises, and I will go through some of the press releases with the promises. And I feel it's time us as councillors say, no. You want to promise something for us, follow through. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be score shots, none of that. What I'm interested in is our community. Our community is facing transition because we're losing jobs, we're losing industries. Now, we have been promised so many times about new jobs. Now, I did go through some of the press releases. Now, we have press releases from the Premier. We have press releases from who is now our Minister for Regional Development, which is our local Minister or our local MP, Harriet Shing. We have press releases from the ex-Regional Development Minister, Marianne Thomas. We also have some from Minister D'Ambrosio. We have RDV, we have LVA, and the list goes on. But it's all about the GovHub here and the promises. Now, 18th of May 2018, we had the Premier say about more jobs are on the way to the Latrobe Valley with the Andrews Labor government, having completed the EOI to appoint a developer and the site for the Latrobe Valley GovHub. Great. We all thought there's the jobs coming. The new Morwell-based GovHub is part of the Latrobe Valley Transition Package to support economic growth and create jobs. And there's the key, create jobs. Not take them from Werribee Traralgon to Morwell or Moe and Newborough to Morwell. It's creating new jobs. So that's the first one. And you also, on the same press release, you have Minister Shing saying the new GovHub will bring jobs and opportunities to the valley. Again, bringing jobs, not transferring. Then you have another one, which, I'm sorry, I didn't write the dates on there. Designs released for the GovHub that will house 200 new public sector jobs.
Councillor Gibson, if I may?
Yes?
I'm going to extend you by 3 minutes.
Oh, sorry, that went quick. Oh, sorry, I didn't hear that. All right, I'll try and speak a bit quicker then, sorry. Labor government is encouraging decentralisation of roles and services from Melbourne to the Valley, not from Moe Newborough, with the call centre for the DFFH coming from the old Moe Hospital to the GovHub. That's not new jobs. Now, and I have the proof from the Department Secretary stating that they're moving. Again, 200 new public sector jobs to the Valley. Castle Rock, who are the developers or developers, owners of the GovHub, is on track to deliver a vital new regional employment hub, and it will bring, mind you, they say 300 new jobs. And look, given that the time went so quick, again and again it's stating more jobs in Latrobe Valley as the GovHub opens the business. Okay, Andrew's Labor government has delivered on its jobs promise to Latrobe Valley. This is July 2021, with hundreds of new public sector jobs at the newly completed GovHub in Morwell. Where are the 200 new jobs? They're not there. We've been dudded. We desperately need the new jobs. We're not getting them. The opening, you have July 2021, and you have Minister Thomas, Minister Shing. Yes, I better sum up. So sorry, we desperately need them to actually come good with the promise. And the thought of them saying, no, you've got to have the, change the call centre from there to, from Moe Newborough. It is our largest employer to the GovHub here. Now, it could be said on the pretext that the roof leaks and the HVAC system is not working. I actually have documentation from the owner who has fixed the roof and is happy to do the HVAC system depending on the lease. If they were going to stay there, that would be done. So there's no reason to rob Moe and Newborough and other jobs, Traralgon, to put in Morwell, because all of the three towns are being dudded. Morwell's not getting the new jobs, the Valley's not getting the new jobs, and our jobs are being taken from our area to put in there, just like there's Parks Victoria and everything else that has actually come over from Traralgon. So I'm saying, no, we need to call them and say, come good with your promises.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillor Law to speak or reserve?
I'll reserve.
Reserve?
I need a break.
There is a
Madam Mayor, is it too late to oppose this motion?
I literally just put the lines through it. I thought you were going to say it. I'm like, no, I'll put the lines through it. He hasn't raised it yet.
No, I'm going to object, Madam Mayor. I've got an issue. If it's not too late, opposition, yep.
There will be a local law change suggested shortly.
We can do a bathroom break.
I will allow it because I have allowed the precedent, but maybe in future councillors, if we could try to do them at the point of the opposition, I really would appreciate it, so I don't scribble all over things and mess it up when we get to the vote. Okay, noting you in opposition, Councillor Harriman, noting Councillor Law has reserved. Councillor Harriman, I come to you to speak.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My objection relates to point 2, actually. I noticed in point 1 that we're writing to the Premier and the Regional Development Minister, yet in point 2 we're only writing to the Premier. I think it's mandatory that in point 2 we also write to the Regional Development Minister as well, and that's my objection based on that issue, Madam Mayor, that it needs to, both issues need to be raised not only with the Premier but also with the Regional Development Minister. Apart from that, Madam Mayor, I'm going to once again steal Councillor Middlemiss's thunder, because that's always fun to do. 200 new jobs were promised to Morwell. Morwell needs 200 new jobs. Moe can't afford to lose 200 jobs. Traralgon can't afford to lose more jobs. I'm happy where, you know, it said 100 existing jobs from the Valley would come to the Morwell GovHub. I know most of those have already come from Traralgon. I cannot see that we can afford to lose the call centre jobs out of Moe to Morwell, unless we call the Morwell GovHub the Morwell GovHub Innovation Centre, because apparently innovation centres are really, really good call centres. And for those that aren't aware, I've just stolen Councillor Middlemiss's thunder, because we also have an innovation hub in Morwell that wasn't given high-paying innovation jobs like it was promised. It was given call centre jobs. Morwell is being dudded, and as somebody that's worked in Morwell for 25 or 26 of the last 30 years, I've seen the decline in Morwell. It needs new jobs. I don't want to see jobs stripped from Moe, particularly when it's one of the major employers in Moe, particularly when most of the people live in Maui. I had a short time span working at a former Telstra call centre in Maui and saw the effect that had on the local economy, local bars in particular, but also food venues, the fact that there was a lot of catering done at that site. Maui's already lost those jobs. It can't afford to lose these jobs as well. So I am fully in support of this notice of motion. And I think Councillor Gibson has pointed it out quite rightly. There are statements made and media releases have been made promising 200 new jobs to Morwell. That is what Morwell deserves, and Maui doesn't deserve to be gutted by it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillors, any further speakers on this one? Councillor Middlemas, hand just sort of blended in there. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Harriman has stolen my thunder. We need to ask these questions. There's no doubt about it. New jobs were promised for Morwell, and that question needs to be asked: is that still on track? And we need to make the point that taking the only major employer out of Maui and moving over to here will have a knock-on effect on businesses in Maui. Councillor Harriman referred to the former Telstra centre. I was involved in winning that for the Valley. In fact, we might have to change B1 because I think that's actually the Telstra centre we're referring to there. But that doesn't matter. Yeah, all these points are good. I don't know the answer to this. When I was mayor a couple of years ago, people like Councillor Harriman were very concerned about the lack of plantations being implemented, and council would pass supportive resolutions, which I'd have to take off to the government. And I've found that modern politicians, when they receive resolutions like this, seem to roll up in a defensive ball. I did raise the lack of promised plantations with the Minister for Regional Development at the time, and a local member of Parliament quietly spoke to the CEO later and said I wasn't helpful. I was actually doing what the council had directed. But I don't know how we get round that, this super sensitivity of politicians, but all I can say is these are legitimate questions that we, as the representatives of this community, should ask.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemas. Councillor Clancy.
Just a question. I'm sorry, I'm looking through my emails to the CEO, if I could. Steve, you sent us an email. I can't remember if it was back around, or it might have come from Tim, sorry. It was around December or January, around the GovHub update. And I'm not finding what I need to. I've found one from Tim about the jobs that have been and the approach that you've made, and you're meeting with someone, or... Sorry for my vague question, but I can't find that.
Thanks, through you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Councillor Clancy. There have been a few updates I've provided to councillors. As you would know, the matter of particularly the relocation of the proposed relocation at that point early on of the DFFH call centre was raised in the community and by councillors, and we did seek to get some feedback from the department about what was proposed. It did take a little bit of time to find the right contact. They did get back to us, and I provided councillors with an update in relation to the DFFH call centre, I think in early January or late December. Subsequent to that, I also advised the councillors that I'd made contact with the relevant person who's managing the GovHub facility and had asked very similar questions that are proposed in this motion, to which I've had an interim response stating they would meet with me, provide further information, and I followed up again last week and prior to that, and they're advised they're still yet to arrange that meeting, but they will provide some further information in terms of getting that from other departments. The Mayor has also, in one of the emails, I think it was mid-January from memory, thereabouts, has also advised that she's written to the Regional Development Minister asking for a meeting in relation to these same issues.
Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Clancy. Councillors, anyone else wish to speak in relation to this? No? Councillor Law, you're reserved.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just to wind it up quickly, because everyone else has had their share, and I think it's important for Maui that we certainly push back. I mean, it's You know, we're a town that doesn't have the engineering or, say, what we'd call it, industrial components of the mall, and we certainly don't have the professional component that Tarrolgan has. So we're very limited on what we have in Maui, and this has been one of the key components that has kept a lot of the basic community going, because it's offered jobs to a lot of people. It is disappointing that that this arrangement, and it's purely, I think, probably a fight between two tenants for space in certain ways. That we've had an old hospital site that's 40 years old that's had probably one update, and then we've got a brand new building that's 2 years old, and as we know, no jobs have gone in there. The 200 jobs haven't gone in there. We've got plenty of space. The car park's empty, so they're trying to make it look like it's an active centre. So they've simply gone and poached, and I think we do need to ask the question of our ministers, because it's very disappointing for Maui. You know, like, but it's a struggle between probably two tenants, two groups, landlords vying for some business. So yeah, very disappointing, and hopefully that we have the ability to turn that decision around, but we'll have to wait and see. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Law. On the basis of that, Councillor Harriman's opposition has gifted Councillor Gibson the opportunity to close. I know what you're up to. Councillor Gibson, if you can, 3 minutes to close. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you to my fellow councillors for their comments. Yes, the MPs do get a bit sensitive when we call them on the promises. Now, there was some comments by one of our ministers stating basically that it was...
Can't bring anything new in, Councillor.
Oh, it's more of the press
Oh, the same one? Sure.
So, you know, same type of thing that, no, it's not true, we're going to deliver it. Well, actually, no, as I was saying before, I actually have proof. The acting secretary at the department actually stated in writing that about the relocation, same as the executive director has approved it. You know, it keeps on going on, and you were saying about the difference, where's the room for everyone, because you also have Minister D'Ambrosio saying we're going to have the SEC there. There's no room for all these different jobs. And I'll sum it up with what Councillor Middle was saying. He actually was one of the people who actually got the call centre there in the very first place. And the press release from June in 2001. Today's announcement is also a tribute to Councillor Graham Middlemiss, who represented Council at an initial meeting with Telstra in April last year.
Careful that I don't get the blame.
And you briefed Council on the best possible way to attract a call centre, and that was said by the Mayor of the day, which was Councillor Brendan Jenkins. And he goes on to say there will be massive benefits for Latrobe citizens, whether they come from Maui, Maul or Tarrolgan, by having that call centre there. He said it should not be forgotten about what it actually brings to our area, not just Maui and Newborough. But you're right, we cannot afford to have this taken away because we don't have the different expertise that the other towns do. We have a different niche, and let's not lose. At the moment, there's about 140 jobs there. So they're jobs in our town. They're not new jobs that are being put at the Gov Hub. We were promised new jobs. Give us the new jobs and stop taking them from, whether it be, as Councillor Harriman said, Parks Victoria or anything else from Traralgon to Morwell or us to Morwell. No, new jobs, not transferred jobs. Sorry.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. Councillors, we have had speakers. We have had opposition.
Yeah, we have. The opposition will be quick at next meeting.
We will put this notice of motion to the vote. Councillors, those in favour? Councillor Clancy, Councillor Gibson, Councillor Harriman, Councillor Howe, Councillor Ferguson, Councillor Law, Councillor Middlemiss and myself. The notice of motion is carried unanimously. Thank you so much, councillors. Okay, we are now moving on. Sorry, nearly forgot. It's written there. It's on the sticky note. Need to get brighter sticky notes. Councillor Lund, we'll get Councillor Lund back into the room before we move on to the 14s. What? Yep, after the break. Yep, we'll take a break. At the break. Break. No, I was going to... Oh, stop it. Oh, can we vote him off the island? That's not fair. Alrighty, welcome back, Councillor Lund. We are moving on to item 14 on the agenda. There are no reports listed to be tabled for items for tabling. We do, however, have acknowledgements for item 15. I have a couple up front that I'm going straight to Councillor Middlemiss, who also has an acknowledgement, and then we'll make our way around the table as well. I just wanted to take the opportunity to send our most sincere condolences to the Sutton family on the loss of Adam in the recent motor vehicle accident at Glengarry, and also pass on our thoughts and best wishes to the family in relation to young Darcy's recovery. I think it's important that we acknowledge that these sorts of circumstances have significant impacts not only on the family but the community members, and we acknowledge it for them. This is a very difficult time, and particularly for those family members that are known to us, and we understand that this is extremely difficult for them at this point. So I just wanted to pass on in a formal way our condolences, and we will also write to the family acknowledging that as well. And also, since our last meeting, there was the passing of Faye Langstaff. I've had a number of opportunities to be able to speak to the contribution that Mrs Langstaff has made to our local community, the number of clubs, the organisations, and some of my colleagues may also choose to reflect on Faye's contribution as well. But to note that she is someone who did have a significant impact in our local community, and her loss is widely felt within the community. Councillor Middlemiss, to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's a pity it's so late. I actually had prepared some notes and everything on this, but I'll try to cut through it. I'd like to acknowledge the 100th anniversary of the first Morwell Scout Group. We have many, hundreds, if not thousands of organisations in our city that do great work to support our community, and we just don't have the mechanism to acknowledge them. We just don't have the time, and many of them are deserving of great acknowledgement. However, when a group reaches 100 years of operation, I think it's worth mentioning here. So I'll just read out, I have circulated to you the notes on the first Morwell Scout Group's history prepared by Graham Sennett. And I'll just read some extracts into the meeting. That, personally, I'd characterise scouting now as being about challenging activities for young people that develop life skills and citizenship. But if you look back at the over 100 years ago, the first public meeting to talk about the Morwell Scout Group, a guest speaker from Melbourne, from Scout organisation, said that the Scout movement was to train boys in matters not taught in state schools and to build up a good character. A Scout must be obedient, respectful to all and especially to his elders, to be helpful to the aged and infirm, and have consideration for others, self-control and the spirit of sacrifice and leadership. In short, it taught boys to behave like gentlemen. In 21, just before they started it, the local Methodist minister said, it's there to keep boys off the street, to teach them how to behave and how to march, and many other benefits. Now, I suspect the current members of the mall, First Mall, would be shrinking to hear that that's what they did back in those days. But history is interesting. In October 21, the mall advertiser asked, has anybody got a spare barn, shed or hut for this new scout group to meet in? This is in 21. They ended up meeting, sharing the Mechanics Institute Hall, the Mall Fire Brigade shed, on a number of occasions under street lights. Can you imagine going to a Scouts meeting in the middle of winter, standing under a lamppost, and that's all the facilities they had? So they've come a long way. They've had 4 Scout halls through the history of Mall. There's the current one, but the other 3 were all demolished for progress. The last one that was demolished is where Coles is now. Look, this is the most fascinating document I've seen. This is the history of the males of Mall for the last 100 years. As a little tacker, I was always fascinated by our milkman. In those days, the milkman carried a milk can. He was fit as hell, and he'd lump this great milk can along, ladle the milk out into people's billies, etc. When I was going to Melbourne, we used to get up before dawn and I'd go out and see him run along the street. And I find here that in 1935, he went to the Jamboree at Frankston. And first time I've seen this guy's name for 50 years, but here it is, a bloke called Haven Davey.
I'm going to extend your vote 3 minutes, Councillor Millamers.
Oh, sorry, I don't mean to hold you all here, I'll cut short. A great effort by these people. If I look back just in the time that we can all remember, since the 70s, their key leaders have been Mac Wood, Jeff Perry, Roy Ewell and Matt Ball. I think you all know them. And another one of them was Don Lovinson, who we recognised at the Australia Day ceremony only a week or so ago. So well done to the First Mall Scout Group. I'm sure council, not these councillors, look forward to recognising your second century in 21-21. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Middlemess. So, councillors, we have the opportunity for other acknowledgements, or Councillor Law.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to acknowledge they don't get enough recognition sometimes, but our staff on Australia Day at GPAC, I thought that was the most magnificent event that we've put on for a long time, and the air conditioning does work over there compared to Carnot Hall. But it was a really, really good event. It was well managed, and it really credit to our staff because it went off without a hitch, and it was fantastic. And I think everyone that was there on the day should be proud of the event that we put on from the top to the bottom. It was great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Law. Councillor Harriman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I've got 2, or 1. I'd just like to acknowledge the passing of Bernie Carrington, who was a living legend in Traralgon. For those that aren't aware of Bernie's long and extensive community activity, Bernie did 2 terms as a councillor on Traralgon Shire and Traralgon City. Sorry?
Former mayor, I believe.
He's a former mayor, yep. He did serve a term as mayor. But Bernie's community service extended across a range. I won't go into all of it. There's 2 parts that I think are just outstanding that people need to be aware of and that show the depth of work Bernie put into his community. One was as with the Girl Guides. As people may or may not be aware, we have the Girl Guides camp out at Burnett Park in Glengarry West. Bernie was instrumental in establishing that site, in gaining the land from what was then the Country Roads Board, or its predecessor, and was also responsible for helping build, as in physically build, the camp out there, the camp huts and wiring of it. With Traralgon Girl Guides, and I have to say that Bernie was actually one of the first men to ever become an honorary Girl Guide for the amount of work he actually did for guides. And because you have to be a Girl Guide to serve on any board, and the amount of work he was doing and the amount of knowledge he had, they actually put him on a couple of boards, so they made him an honorary Girl Guide. With Traralgon Girl Guides, one of the highest awards that a Girl Guide can go for is the Queen Scout award, and it's also for Junior Scouts. It's the PAL award. Bernie actually paid for a scholarship for Girl Guides to go and do those two. They are not, in the day, weren't cheap to do. They're still not there. They're a lot more accessible today, but in the past they were expensive. He actually set up a scholarship so that any Girl Guides wanting to do those could actually go ahead and do them. Probably the second biggest legacy Bernie had was as a member of the Lions Club. Bernie was a 40-plus year member of the Lions, which is absolutely massive, and was an active member until his wife became ill in the last 2 years. So he was still in his 90s, turning up to meetings, turning up to barbecues, turning up to spinning wheels, turning up to fundraising activity. Bernie basically covered any position you could have as a Lion. He was a district governor. He held all positions basically at a district level. He was president for Traralgon did 2 terms as president, held all positions, and probably a tribute to his skills. There is a 35-year-old shed in Hickok Street that the Lions Club still use that Bernie actually built himself on the weekend. And I'm told by some that still remember it that he was, not only did he organise it, he was up the ladders putting the beams in place and telling people how useless they were on site. So I would just like to acknowledge, for those that didn't know Bernie, you'll never get a greater character. Exceedingly quick with his wit, even into his 90s. He was not one that I wanted to trade barbs with because I'd always lose, but a man of a hugely generous heart. And I'd just like to pass on our condolences to Bernie's family and to those that knew Bernie. It is a huge, huge gap in the community now that Bernie's passed. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Harriman. Councillors, any other acknowledgements that you would like to raise? And you're able to revisit if there's words you want to offer for ones already made. No? Okay. Thank you, councillors. We'll continue to move through. Next, we close the meeting to the public. Do I have a motion to close the meeting? Councillor Gibson, Councillor Middlemiss. Any opposition? I doubt it very much. Okay, on that basis, we will formally close the public part of the meeting at 9:34 p.m. We will thank those who've been with us on the live stream. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate that. We close the meeting now to consider those matters in the closed section of the meeting. We thank you all very much, and we'll see you at next month's meeting. Thanks, everyone. Good night.